Hello everybody, and welcome to a very special presentation of Crushing Comics. Do not adjust your streaming screens because it is I, Krisis, coming to you live from an apocalyptically rainy day outside in New Zealand, but inside, it's all about loving comic books because I'm here with a presentation that is very special for you. It is something I've been talking about doing for months now. It is my infinite to-be-read pile, except for we're not going to try to chart infinity in my crushers. We are just going to try to chart the top 100. And even if I were to talk about each of the entries in that top 100 for 2 minutes each, we would be talking for over, I don't know how math works. I hear over 3 hours. So we've really got to get to it. I'm just going to say hi to a variety of people in the chat who are very patient as I worked out some computer streaming issues, but I think we're all good. Fingers crossed. I'm sure I've ruined it just by saying that, and now we're up for some assorted crisis events, as someone in the chat. Just say some quick hellos to folks such as, does it not show chats anymore? There we go. Super Jop. Hello to you. I think you may have been number 1 in the comments today, although Logan Wayne got in pretty early. Very excited for this finally to happen. Cedric and Ellen, I have 2 books specifically that I think you will be very surprised to see on the list. Edwin Billiot, I hope you are feeling okay. I know you're recovering right now. Yane Pauls, who is very excited for this. Skeletonagi, it's gonna take some rehearsal, but we're gonna get it right, is also here. Mall360, one of our very regulars. Oh, well, I can't really do anything about American football, but I can do something about our great and deep and wide love comic books. David M. Wiz is here. I don't know I've ever said hello to that name before, and indeed, he's saying that he's never been to a live before. Idle Wildler, I swear there used to be a band in Philadelphia of Idle Wilds. Idle Wilds? Yeah. Oh, internet ready or lack of internet. Through today, we're just going to push through. For the back gaming is here, as well as James Abel. I can't be any more than what I am, so we're just gonna roll. Hopefully that's better, and if not, I truly can't do anything about it. Stoops is here. They changed some stuff in StreamYard, y'all. They changed it, and everything's slow now. And we know that the computer can only take so much. And whatever they change in the computer does not. Y'all, StreamYard be tripping. StreamYard thinks there's 5 of me in the stream right now. I can't kick any of them out. I can't even describe. They changed some settings, and now everything is broken. Everything. But you know what? This is what I get for not showing up every week. Things change, and I didn't even know. We're going to lower the definition of the camera. That kicked out all the other people. And let's just get started, shall we? Let's not tempt fate any further. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Here we go. Okay, I do know there's some other people. Oh, that's not our normal layout. Imagine trying to fly a plane, but they changed the plane. That's what I'm experiencing right now. Lance McNair is here. SUIBX is here. Patrick Borgeld. Jamie C47, I saw you in there. Max is here. And the crisis verse is real. Go home, StreamYard, you're drunk. It is. Okay, folks, that was a relatively prompt 4 minutes of introductions. Let's get into it, because I know what you're here to do. You're here to listen to me talk about all the comics that I want to read. So let's, oh yeah, that's okay. So let's talk about what is the infinite to-be-read pile. I spent the last couple of months, ever since I came up with the idea just walking around the house, making a list of things to read. I made it while browsing Crushing Crisis, which has guides to just about every Marvel comic and a lot of DC and a lot of indie. I made it while reviewing the 2025 Omnibus polls, and I asked for recommendations from some of you. You might see one or two of those on here. And I just walked around to all the different bookshelves in the house and just was like, what's that? Have I read that? And the answer is usually no. I conservatively thought that I would wind up with about 200 runs that I would be reading or have available to read. No, it turned out to be about 600 plus runs. Oh my goodness. So what's on the list? It includes runs and original graphic novels that I've never read, or I've only read less than 50% of them, so they're still very much in progress, or I first read them in full, but it was prior to 2017, because 2017 is when I started keeping track of every comic that I've read. Since then, I have tracked over 20,000 single issues of comic books. I started tracking about 8 months before we got to New Zealand. But that's 90% new releases, because I've so much kept up with pull lists. At the beginning, I caught up with DC Rebirth. I was catching up with Marvel All New, All Different. So those 20,000 comic books have surprisingly little 2014 comics in them, other than my read of Claremont X-Men with Kid Crisis. And also, you have to think about that I have one of the biggest comic guide websites on the internet, and so I have paged through thousands, tens of thousands of comic books. It doesn't mean I read them in comprehensive format, though. I can think of one or two that you're going to see in this top 100 where I literally have probably opened one of the issues 10, 20 times because it has so many significant character appearances and stories in it, and yet, I still have not read it all the way through. So that's kind of wild. But I didn't just make a list and check it twice like Santa Claus, because I would never get through it. It was 600 books, and that would just be its own year-long project. So I built an algorithm where I could just rank all of the books in numerical ways, and then the algorithm would calculate what my top 100 would be. And the algorithm has 4 components. The first component is desire. How badly do I want to read the run right now? The second one is significance. How important is the run? How absurd and regretful is it that I have yet to read it in full, or that I need to read it again in my note-taking era, right? Because of its reputation, its creators, its place in comic book history. How much fun do I think I'll have? Like, even if my desire is low, is it just a book that's from my sweet spot of reading and collecting that I would really, really enjoy? And of course, I don't know how much fun I'll really have. I can only guess. And then length. I think it's better to put shorter things higher on the list and just knock them out. At the point that I've got 600 plus, if I can read, 10 things that are about 10 issues each, or one thing that's 100 issues each, I am going to lean towards the 10. It doesn't mean there's not long things in the top 100, but you will see as we get higher in the list, shorter things start to do better because my personal algorithm that I made favors them. And this also does not include any reads that I'm currently in progress on. Things that I'm over 50% of the way through. Black AF, G.I. Joe Energon Universe, I only have 5 issues left. Gunslinger Spawn, and all of the Spawn Universe titles, I've got about 20 issues each as I close the gap from the beginning to where I picked them up. House of Slaughter, I only have 1 more arc. Marvel's Voices one-shots, I'm about halfway through. Miracle Man, I'm about halfway through. Rachel Rising, I only have like 10 issues left. The Ring of the Nibelung, I only have 10 issues left. Sandman, I'm past the halfway point. Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, I think we established on Justice Stream, I have 14 issues left. Wonder Woman by Perez, I have 13 issues left. And X-Men Road to Onslaught, I think I've already passed Uncanny X-Men 325. So I'm pretty far along on all of those reads. They are not on the list. So are you ready? I am going to be keeping an eye on your comments, but we got to get through the stuff quickly or else this is going to be an all-day affair. So but please respond as you see things. Have you read them? Do you love them? Do you think I will like them? Have you always wanted to read them? Are you hearing about it for the first time? Something interesting. 2 things, actually. One is that I counted the issues that would be in all of these top 100, and it comes out to almost exactly 4,000 issues. Now, that's about how many issues of comics I read in a typical year. So, theoretically, if I did not do pull lists next year, I could read every one of these top 100 in 1 year. Would I do that? No, because I like reading new comics. But I think it is reasonable to say over the course of, 4 years that I can stuff 1,000 of these into each year and get through this top 100, and then I would have a new top 100. That would be cool. It's kind of like how the Omnibus gets printed, and then we have new stuff in the top 100. But the other really interesting thing about this that I did not realize until just before go time is I own 3/4 of this in physical format. And some of the things are things that I've like pre-ordered that are coming out relatively soon. So usually you know me to be a digital reader, even when I have physical things, because I use Marvel Unlimited and DC Infinite so much. These are books I physically have. And in the case of about maybe 10 or 12 of them that are like pretty unique and you maybe aren't familiar with, I've gone around the house and tried to pull some off the shelves. I didn't pull everything off the shelves because remember the stack I did last week? The stack would be 3 times as high because we're talking about 100 runs here. But I did pull some unique stuff to show you as we go. Okay, final video and mic check. Can everybody see and hear me? I see a couple of other great friends who have popped up here. Johnny is here from the Biff Bam Pow comic book podcast. Kane is here, my East Coast US friend. There's Kane's original one. And I think, and Novarg is here with Elle, who I love to see in that little profile pic. DB All-Star, who I've been having an amazing conversation with all weekend on the, what's Omar's channel called Near Mint Condition Discord, and my very, very good friend Max Appleman. Flames on the side of my laptop. That is probably what my laptop is saying on a regular basis. And Vision 940 getting in right under the gun along with Richard Bradley. Okay, ready? Here's the top 100. I didn't choose. I just gave them objective ratings in the criteria, which were, again, desire, significance, fun, and length. I don't have the grades on here because that would have taken 8 more hours to prep. This is just what the algorithm told me, not AI, an algorithm of my own design. Okay, here we go. At number 100 is We Three by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. I don't always love Grant Morrison's work, but sometimes it's very affecting. And I think that I have made a concerted effort to read a lot of the more hard sci-fi and hard superhero Grant Morrison things, some of which don't really resonate with me. This seems to be one of the kind of cute core, but also weird and also disturbing Grant Morrison books. I know virtually nothing about it other than the cover, and that people have told me time and again that they cannot believe that I haven't read it. Because it is so short, it is a great candidate for this project. I could probably knock it out this evening with no effort whatsoever, so maybe we will, but we have 99 other things to choose from. Richard Bradley is saying W3 is wonderful. Jamie C347 saying this is one I've somehow never read as a big Morrison fan. You've just reminded me of it. You know, before we go any further, I do remember one thing I need to do, which is I need to document the makeup. No, not that. What is it called? Photo booth. Because so often I forget until the end of the stream, and then if I want to try to do it again, I can't remember. And I haven't seen it yet. I don't have my glasses on because this is really big. So I truly do not know what I will look like until I see this after. So let's take a quick picture and then on with the show. I know, vanity is always the chief concern here, even more than comics. Okay, now I'll remember how to do this makeup if we liked it. Okay, let's continue. At 99, this may be the newest thing, spoilers, on the entire list, is Minor Threats from Patton Oswalt, Jordan Blum, and a host of other creators. I have a big thing for new superhero shared universes. I will try anything, even if it's by an author I don't really love. I tried Black Hammer, even though I don't usually like Jeff Lemire. I loved Wildstorm back in the day. Any kind of new shared universe with super stuff happening, I tend to read. I've read every single issue of the Lionforge Catalyst universe. You will never find anybody else who knows anything about that, I promise you. So you've seen on Pull List, where I've read one of the newer series of Minor Threats, which is just a serialization of other authors playing in the world of Minor Threats, but I've never actually read the main Minor Threats, and there's not that much of it. I think it's under 20 issues. I don't have my whole spreadsheet open because then the computer would truly die. So if anybody read this yet, I'm very excited to check it out, and I really think Patton Oswalt is one of the few funny people in real life where their funny actually translates really well to comic book funny. I'm just going to move my... You always should be able to see the pin if I've set things up, so I'm going to move it over a little bit more. I think now you should be able to see it. Okay. Okay. Number 98, Supreme. And there's a lot of Supreme, and I have all of it. One of my projects before I left America was to collect every single issue of this, including all of the Alan Moore, including Lady Supreme, including crossovers, including one-shots. I truly have everything. And that everything adds up into the 80 issue range, so this is not a short read, which is why it is so low. And it is one of the things that I only have in floppy. There are no digital versions available because Rob Liefeld didn't have the rights for so long. that he's never brought it back in digital, except for maybe just the first issue. So I would have to sit down with physical comics, which I'm very happy to do, and read this. It started out as the Extreme Universe kind of version of Superman. He's extraterrestrial, he's all powerful. A lot of the things in the original Image universe were takeoffs of Marvel and DC tropes, but it just grew to be so much more over time, and some of it is just awful schlocky, you know, Liefeld universe stuff, but Rob Liefeld actually doesn't write a lot of it, and as it goes on, the lore of Supreme gets more and more interesting, especially when Alan Moore arrives, and it actually at points gets a little bit closer to Sentry in vibe than it does to Superman. It's actually, if I had just made a list without the algorithm, I probably would have shoved this into the top 10 or 20, but it's a pretty dauntingly long read, and I've got to haul it out of the stacks, so I will need to do that. Dr. Zero pointing out that we are waiting for a library edition of Minor Threats. That's pretty quick, so it must be relatively popular right now. Okay. Let's continue to number 97, XO-Manowar, and I have this on the shelf, baby. This is XO-Manowar from 1992, the original Valiant comics. You know that I recently showed these off in a haul around the world because I got an amazing deal on them from the States. This only collects half of the series, so I do kind of need there to be a second one, but I could just read the first one, and you will find out during this that I have split up some runs if they have natural breakpoints or stopping points, because again, shorter was better for the algorithm and just for me in general to like actually sit down and do the thing. But I have a lot of affection for this. I read a lot of single issues back in the 90s. I really love the reproduction in this book. You can tell I'm a Kiwi now. I said reproduction without even thinking about it. And this has some art in it by Joe Quesada, as well as writing from Bob Layton, Jim Shooter, and Steve Englehart. And this is, I mean, I have memories of all of the Valiant properties from back in the day, but Manowar is probably the one that I have the most fond memories of actually like digging, and I've read actually some of the new XO-Manowar, so this is the one Valiant property where I'm actually really qualified to be like, ooh, how is this different from the 2012 version? Edwin Billiot loves original Valiant. Super Jop has only read issue 0 because it was by Quesada, and how great is that chromium cover? I found a really good scan of it to use in the slideshow compared to this non-chromium version. Still very cool, and I think this is a modern recolor, but I just love those 90s chromium covers so much. Again, this is one that I probably would have tried to just put everything in the top 20 if I had the chance, which is why sometimes machine learning is good. Okay, let's move on to number 96. I want to know if any of you have heard of this book. It is called Long Lost, and it is from Scout Comics, and I would say it is one of relatively few breakout hits that Scout Comics had. This was in the period of like 2016, 17, 18, where like some of the smaller publishers like Black Mask, like Vault, were starting to make their name, and Scout was originally starting to seem like it might be one of the ones that would, and then they just never kind of crossed the line. But this particular book by Matthew Ehrman and Lisa Sterl just got a lot of notice. A lot of people online really enjoyed it, and Matthew Ehrman has gone on to do other stuff that's been well noticed, and this kind of just got lost in the mix. I have this digitally from Scout. At one point, I think it was like, I don't know, so I just had some extra money one week, who knows why, and I went on Scout's website and I like cleaned them out. I got every possible comic. Now since then, Scout has been proven to maybe not have some great business practices. Maybe we're not treating all of their creators really well, but that tends to be the story with a lot of indies. We can't take that out on the books. So I literally have never read this. It's been on my list for so long. It's not that long, and I've got it digitally. So why have I not read it? I have no idea. Next up is another small press book, kind of. This is called Kid Lobotomy. It's from the Brief Black Crown line at IDW, and I loved Black Crown. You hear me talk all the time about one of my favorite comics of all time. I only have the sequel on hand here, which is Punk's Not Dead, or actually maybe this is the first one. No, this is the second one, which is also from Black Crown, and they were just a very cool, punky comic book company, and they were edited by, I want to make sure that I say this right, Shelley Bond, who was originally one of the major Vertigo editors and kind of went there and reestablished this line with all these big hitters. This is written by Peter Milligan, and it's got art from Tess Fowler, and it's pretty short, and it just, the graphic design of it, I love the color look here, which is Lee Luffridge. Attica Bidikar is the letterer, who is one of my favorite letterers. It's pretty much a dream team, and Peter Milligan I'm kind of hit or miss with, but in something this short and this whimsical, I do tend to get excited for him. And so it's just like it's one of the rare books on all of this list that's from after 2017. I just somehow missed it as things were happening, because I think I was slow to pick up Black Crown. First I tried Punk's Not Dead because I knew, maybe I didn't even know either Martin Simmons or David Barnett at that point. And then I think I also tried, Teenie Howard had an early Black Crown series. But anyway, point being, I never got to this one. So this is one of the very few Black Crown series and one of the very few new series that is on the list. Now, I don't have my glasses right now, but Assassinistas. Yeah, it was by Teenie Howard, which is one of the other books from Black Crown that I read. And Euthonauts, that was the one that really made me fall in love with Black Crown, which was also by Teenie Howard. So I just want to read some more Black Crown. Okay. Number 894. You might be surprised that this is this low, or you might be surprised that it's on my list at all. I'm interested to know which way you go. This is Aquaman by Peter David. Of course, we just got an omnibus of this, which is pretty exciting. I don't have that. This is one of the ones I do not have physically. I remember this era. I was there for this, but I was not super into Aquaman at the time. I was pulling Wonder Woman. I was pulling Superman. I was pulling a couple Batman books. Aquaman, Flash, and Green Lantern were just not part of the things I was interested in. But I do remember the hook for hand. I remember this being on the stands. And as I became aware of Peter David, as I kept reading comics, I was like, oh, that'll probably be interesting. And then I kind of just tuned it to the back of my brain. This is a pretty solid run of comic books. It's an omnibus full, so that's probably why it's a little bit lower in the poll. But I do think I'll have a lot of fun reading it because it's Peter David and it's a saga. You know, it's him doing 50 issues. So it's going to have a wonderful, wonderful sweep of plot. Vision 940 already been put onto 3 books and we've only covered 5. Novarg says, not an Aquaman reader, but I'm so happy that the bullet logo is back on these issues. But here's something you'll see maybe a couple times on the poll. Actually, slightly ahead of that is the Aquaman post-crisis stuff. Now, I was not prescriptive about if I have to read runs sequentially. I think that is the great killer of a to-be-read pile. You know, if you look and you're like, oh, I've got to start that in the golden age. Oh, I've got to start that in the 90s. No, man, that's not how comic books work. Start where you feel like starting on that day. Read to where you want to read in that day. However, I have always been fascinated by the weird limbo that Aquaman was in after Crisis. He actually kind of takes the longest to get like really underway out of all of DC's heroes because he's kind of floundering until Peter David gets to him. He has a one-shot special, then he has a mini-series, then he has another special, then he has like a short-lived series that nobody talks about ever, and then also in there is the Atlantis Chronicles, which is this definitive history of all of Atlantis, which then Peter David does rely on when he comes on to the title. So I'm actually more familiar with the plots and the innards of these from trying to look at all of them individually and figure out the order they're in and stuff for doing the Aquaman guide on my site than I am with the Peter David thing, weirdly. This is not well collected. I do think it's all on DC Infinite now because I was on last night to get the images of the covers. So it's not always going to be the case that I have an earlier run ahead of a later run. It just so happened that these were, I think they were actually tied, and so I had to decide which one to put first, and I thought, oh, well, I would rather, if 2 things are tied, I would rather start at the start. Okay, 92, if you watched the DC Omnibus poll near mint condition this year, you learned about my growing obsession with Hawkman. You know, it's funny, when I used to have the DC toys as a kid or watch cartoons, it was just like this guy with like wings strapped to his chest. He didn't seem cool at all, and yet I did like something about his design. And I never cared about him at all until I read the 2018 Robert Venditti DC series with Brian Hitch on art, and that is one of my favorite DC series of the past 10 years. I highly, highly endorse it. It was actually one of the series I brought to the first Evergreen show on near mint condition for DC Comics. So Hawkworld is, again, we're going into the immediately post-crisis world where a lot of Hawkman's history has kind of been altered, but not in a bad way, because the JSA stuff has been merged into the main world of DC. But what does that mean for Hawkman? Is he Carter Hall, an archaeologist? Is he from some other planet? What does that mean for Thanagar? And so this actually starts out not on Earth, and then it progresses. It's actually an original miniseries, not by John Ostrander, although people think John Ostrander wrote all of it. Then John Ostrander writes this long series, I think it's 29 issues. Then it rolls into a Hawkman ongoing. The ongoing is a separate entry on my list. I'm fascinated by the idea of Hawkworld. I want to read superheroes as sci-fi. I want to read this societal struggle. I hear it's like a lot about like their society and what things are like on that planet. I like the idea of that. That's a really different kind of book than the typical superhero book that I have read or typically get to read. Skeletonagi saying that I haven't heard of Hawkworld before. It sounds really interesting. Yeah, I had never heard of it before I did the DC poll. I just knew that Ostrander started writing Hawkman. And then even when I heard the word Hawkworld, I just thought it was called Hawkworld because, gosh, that's hard to say fast, but I'm doing okay at it. I thought it was called Hawkworld because it was just multiple Hawks. I didn't know that it was like on Hawkworld. And then the conflict spills onto Earth later. So again, this is a great example. I don't have a Hawkman guide, so I really have not been in these issues. I just know them from like a bibliographic standpoint because I had to research it to know how to map it for the poll. And that's actually another unusual thing about me. A lot of times I know things about the like who wrote the comic books or how long the comic books ran or whatever. And despite never being into the actual comic books because I do not have experience with that. I'm just going to open, I don't know if I can make it. There's so many books piled up here. I just want to open the shade so I get a little bit of side light here. Oh. Okay. Good thing I'm wearing pants today. Oh, that's so much better. Okay, let's continue. Yeah, Richard Bratt, well, I'll talk about this and then I'll get to the comic. Glory! Glory, glory, hallelujah. This is Glory, which was Images, again, Extreme, which was Rob Liefeld's image launch imprint. They're kind of filed the serial numbers off version of Wonder Woman, made even more filed the serial numbers offy because they got Mike Deodato fresh off of Wonder Woman to draw it. This is another thing that you cannot read digitally. I'm so sorry. Some of you are familiar with the Joe Keating and Sophie Campbell version of this, which was one of those few Extreme Comics kind of reboot, relaunches, retinkerings that happened in the 2000s and 2010s along with Prophet. This is the original of Glory, where she was not ironic at all. She was a straight up copy of Wonder Woman, but of course I love Wonder Woman and I love Mike Deodato, and so this is really exciting to me. I have every single issue. I intended to get it bound before I left the United States and I just ran out of time. So this is really something that I would love to sit down and do. It's been now 10 years almost since I accumulated all of those issues. And if I'm not going to read them now, when am I going to read them? Edwin Billy going back an entry and saying the original Hawkworld miniseries was really good. The ongoing series I thought was okay. There were some weird ideas. Well, that's what I'm signing up for. Richard Bradley saying this is the thing I try to advise when people ask what do I need to read first on long running Big Two comics. Just dive into a run that looks cool. You don't need to read 85 years of Batman in order. That needs to be like pinned on all of the comic book Reddits and the omnibus Reddits and the graphic novel Reddits. I always say if somebody's like, I just don't know, I say go on Fandom or DC Infinite or Marvel Unlimited, scroll until you see a cool cover, go and read that one issue. Assume you're not going to understand everything or anything, but if it makes you have questions that are entertaining, then just find the starting point right before that issue, or just read forward from that issue. That's what we used to do from the newsstand, and then you'll fill in the details later. But I think that the definitiveness of the MCU on screen and also manga and the way that manga is released and the sequential volumes of manga has really changed how people expect comic stories to be told, and it's really hard to convince. And this whole like everything's always a number one from Marvel and DC. Everybody always thinks there's a starting point, and when they see these high numbered series, they get really, really consternated about it. Okay, well, we've only gotten through 10. This one came from one of you, and I cannot remember which one of you it was. It's called Love Fights, and it is not a big glossy superhero comic. It's from Oni Press from the 2000s, and it is just like almost comic strippy, almost like webtoony about a superhero trying to figure out their love life. And I had it recommended to me from a few different folks, possibly on the Omnidog stream, to check it out as something that like is kind of they've never heard me mention. They think I would dig, and I think I bought the first issue digitally, or I looked through some pages and I was like, oh, this looks cool, onto the list. And because it's relatively short and because it's so different, even though different was not a factor in the algorithm, for me, like my desire to read something, if something is really different, just like Hawkworld, that kind of like hopscotch things up the list for me a little bit. Cedric and Ellen says, I've read Glory, but it's time to read it again. And if I want to read something again, it's something I really love. Ooh, but do you mean the relaunch, the Joe Keating one, or do you mean original Glory? Edwin and Billy saying, Glory unfortunately had too many starts and stops, but then Alan Moore tried and only had one issue, which I do have. And Superjob saying the Sophie Campbell Glory run is on my personal list. The way I read comics, I'll probably end up reading this too. You do not have to read them both. Those Image reimaginings kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge at the original Image books, but knowing the original Image books does not help you at all. But it is really good. I do have it in paperback, and it is really, really cool. And it just cemented my urge to read the original Glory and collect the original Glory. That's another thing that's going to be a phenomenon on this list. I mean, we'll talk about it when we get to some of them, but some of these are books that I either read in full before 2017 when I first was accumulating trades, or I started getting the trades and then was reading it, and then I got interrupted in 2017 by moving to New Zealand, and they were in boxes, and then I kind of fell off. So you'll see that happen a couple of times as we go. Okay. This is, did we get out of order? Somehow we got out of order. 92, 90, I don't know. But whatever order they're in on here is the truth. So this must be the true 89. This is Hulk, Planet Hulk, and World War Hulk. This is one of those things, I'm not a big Hulk fan. I'm just not. Hulk is probably the Marvel character I've read the least of from before 2012. But I know this is significant. I've paged through it 100 times because there's a lot of different appearances of characters that are tracked in my guides. And I know that it's Greg Pak, who I really enjoy. I don't know what it's actually about. I mean, I know he's on Sakaar, and I know he like battles and becomes their king and somehow has a son, maybe because time goes faster there. I'm truly not sure. So this is something I've never read. I have all of it in paperback. I never got the oversized hardcovers because Hulk wasn't my line. I only got oversized hardcovers when there were no good paperback collections of things. But at the time, there was a good paperback collection of this. And I actually have the paperback collection of World War Hulk, probably like right below here. I'm not going to like jostle everything to get to it. So it's just one of those things that it's kind of embarrassing I haven't read it as somebody who has all of these Marvel guides and speaks to Marvel so often, but I only know it by reputation, which is actually I have, you know what, Jamie C, now that you talk about World War Hulk mashing action figures together, I have read World War Hulk. And I remember at the time is one of those jump in the middle things where I was like, oh, I probably should have read Planet Hulk first. Okay. Planet Hulk, definitely a more special book for Marvel to have put out. Well, I'm excited. You guys seem positive on it. Now we get back to proper number. Number 88, Green Lantern, Green Arrow. Now, if you have followed me for a while, you know that I have very little relationship with pre-Crisis DC, which is not all my fault. I'm not a deadbeat reader. It's because DC had very little relationship with pre-Crisis DC, and they weren't reprinting any of it for decades. And so how would you, other than in like archives and showcase, there were no like easily accessible trades and omnibuses really before the past 10 years. And so I couldn't be blamed, except for I can be blamed for this one, because if there is one run that DC has made a special effort to keep in print in multiple versions, it is Green Lantern, Green Arrow. Now, this is the first issue after the Hard Traveling Heroes stuff, which officially, but usually the collections only collected, I think, to issue 89, which was prior to this, because the tone of the comic changes a little bit. I'm going to read the whole thing. Again, I have no affection for Green Lantern, whatever, other Green Lanterns, but not Hal Jordan. But I do really like Green Arrow, and I know that this was a very significant Bronze Age comic. I know it's got Neil Adams artwork in this run. I know that it really establishes kind of like social issues in DC in the same way that Marvel was doing in a lot of their books. So I almost picked the one where they find Speedy abusing drugs, but that just felt too sensational. So I'm very excited to finally read this, especially because, as Logan Wayne just points out, we're about to get a DC finest for it. And Cedric and Ellen are confirming they do mean the original Glory, not the reboot. Jamie C47 saying this is another one that's been on my list for ages, but I keep putting it off for some reason. Number 87. I know, this is outrageous that I have not read this all the way through. It is Moon Knight 1975 to 1985, which encompasses all of his early appearances and his complete 1980 series, and I think the miniseries right after that before his next lengthy series begins. In my defense, I had no idea who Moon Knight was in 2012. None. I'd never heard of him. I didn't have a single issue from the 90s. I don't even think I had an issue where he was a guest star during Infinity War. I truly had no idea he was a character. And then I was really addicted to the Facebook game Marvel Avengers Alliance. I would pay any amount of money to have it back. It was my comfort game that I would just go, because it was kind of like not really an idle game. You had to play it, but things could happen in the background too. And I miss it so much. And Moon Knight was a character in there. And it was at the time that I was starting to put together Crushing Crisis guides. And I was like, oh, who is, did they just make that character up? And I was like, oh no, he's real. And so then I made a guide, which I think is pretty good. And it's actually one of the most kind of revised modern guides now on Crushing Crisis. And I started buying the singles because at the time there were no Moon Knight collections. There were only 2 essential editions, I want to say. So I think, I'm actually not sure, I might have this all in the stacks. I might have found some lot before he was in the MCU or anybody cared, before even like Jeff Lemire got to him. I might have bought a complete lot of this because there was no collection. And I was like, well, this was before Epic Collections, or even when Epic Collections started, we had no indication they were going to include Moon Knight. So I think I probably got it in singles. Now, have I been through a lot of this run? Yes, because I have a guide to it, and because a lot of other characters appear in this, including Werewolf by Night, who I also have a guide for. So I've read many individual issues. I've paged through many individual issues, even since 2017. I have never sat down and read 2 sequential issues of this run in a row. Edwin, I know, I have no excuse. It is entirely embarrassing. A lot of me putting this together, and I was up until 4:30 in the morning putting this together, and it is only 9:30 in the morning right now. A lot of this was me feeling like I was really exposing myself. Like, I asked myself several times putting it together, would I rather show this list on camera and speak to it, or would I rather come on camera without makeup on? Because some of it is embarrassing, but you have to think that my knowledge of comics, and I'll say this again and again as my internet flutters and dies, is bibliographic in nature. I really know about appearances, creators, runs. The majority of my reading since 2017 has been new comics. And so you're going to find that there's a lot of embarrassing stuff that I probably should have read and did not. I know the internet's saying it's slow again. I don't know if there's anything I can do about that. Let me see if I can tinker a little bit. No, I can't change the definition. I could try turning the internet off and on again, but we've seen that to be a problem in the past. You know what? I'm going to put up the banner in case everything crashes, and we're going to just try to reset the internet and see what happens. Oh, are we back? But still with crappy internet. It's crazy because I'm literally plugged into the wall. Like, there should be no better internet than the internet we're getting right now. All right, I'm going to hit reload. Fingers crossed. Oh boy, we got crisis on multiple crises again. Okay, hopefully that fixed the internet, and hopefully you all played nicely while I was away. Now I've got to reshare the screen and do all that business. We were talking about Moon Knight. So yeah, my point being is that some of these are incredibly embarrassing, without a doubt. Okay, oh, and we're in that terrible layout that it immediately jumps to, and then we get to that one. Okay, let's get back to the comments, and then we can continue. All right, let's go to number 86, Cyberforce. Now, again, this is one I expected to be much higher, but I have all of Cyberforce, all, including somewhere right to my left here, all the way into its like 2017 and 2018 incarnations. This does not include that. This is original Top Cal run of Cyberforce, which I think officially was something like 35 or 37 or 38 issues, but there were a lot of miniseries. There was Ballistic, there was Ripclaw, there was Velocity. So altogether, it actually adds up to a lot of comic books, which is why it's relatively low. You know, it's interesting. Cyberforce really had much less of a point than many of the early Image books. The Wildcats had that great kind of cherubim versus Damonite thing. Spawn kind of took the Venom symbiote but made it about hell. Cyberforce was like, what if mutants but also cyborgs? Like, they're all such obvious takeoffs of versions of X-Men and characters from other companies. I just don't know that it ever quite had the juice in retrospect that some of the other stories had. That said, I do think often it was the coolest visual design. And that's saying a lot because they were all amazing artists, but there's just something so watchable about Cyberforce. And I think out of all of the Image founding artists, Silvestri got the most better at Image. I think Liefeld kind of briefly got interesting and then kind of degraded. I think, Todd only really drew for 25 or 30 issues before he handed it off to Greg Capullo. Jim Lee kind of flitted around and he was very powerful in those years, but Silvestri really drew a lot of Cyberforce. And I think he got better and better. I don't think anything he drew at Marvel was as good as what he was drawing on Cyberforce. And to Super Job, yes, this would include codename Strikeforce. Absolutely, it would. Okay. Cyberforce is very much from the 90s. It's part of the original Image launch from 1992. Vision says, can't go wrong with Silvestri. Yana Paul's saying it's not embarrassing that I haven't read classic runs. It's maybe just embarrassing that I own all of Cyberforce. Number 85, this is something I own all in omnibus, which is Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu. And I have right here on the cover the reason that you can't read it in digital right now, because it has the return of Fu Manchu, which is a character owned by the Saxe-Rohmer estate and not by Marvel Comic Books. So they struck a brief deal. I remember covering it on Crushing Crisis when it happened to have that come out in omnibus. And I don't even think I had a Shang-Chi guide before they announced that it was going to come to omnibus, because there was just literally no collection of it. It was like, what would it even be a guide to? It would just be an appearance guide because you couldn't get any of the issues. And then when they announced the omnibus line, which also wound up encompassing Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, which was a magazine that had a lot of Kung Fu content in it, including some Shang-Chi, which also would have reprint issues. It all came out in 6 incredible volumes. I've read maybe the first 8 issues of it, and I can't remember if they started coming out after I was in New Zealand. I truly don't remember, but I have them all, and I definitely remember sitting down with the first omnibus, or maybe the first Epic collection, and reading a bit and being like, this rocks, and then just never getting any further in it. Yeah. Yarnopels, I probably in this read would read his black and white stuff threaded in because I have my own guide to that, but I would not necessarily read all of those omnibuses in this read because that to me is a separate read. Okay, next is number 84. Now, this is the oldest comic, not necessarily in the list, I don't want to give spoilers, but the oldest read that I have done, because I had a book of Golden Age Wonder Woman when I was 4 that I read all the time, which might explain a lot of things about me. And now, I'm sure you remember that I've said Kid Krisis is reading her way through Golden Age Wonder Woman. I believe she's on omnibus number 4. So I want to do a podcast for it. Kid Krisis just wants to do the podcast with me at this point. I have it all plotted out. I know how I want to do it. It's got to involve news clippings from the day. And I've never found anybody really into doing it with me. And I don't want to pull the whole weight by myself. It's got to be somebody who really, really is obsessed with Wonder Woman and wants to talk about Wonder Woman every weekend would make the time. Also, as somebody who is non-binary, and a bit gender fluid, I really want to have a cis woman's opinion on Wonder Woman, which is not to say I wouldn't also want a trans woman's opinion on Wonder Woman, but I think I'm a little bit nearer to being able to give some of those opinions, having her as a formative influence in what my idea of femininity is. And so again, also people have offered that have been other cis guys to do the podcast with me. And I'm like, well, I would actually really, really like some women's voices here. It feels weird for me to be the lead voice on a Wonder Woman podcast. None of that is about the actual run. I love Golden Age Wonder Woman. I think it's one of the best Golden Age comic books. I've read many, many issues of it. I've never sat down and read one of the omnibuses cover to cover. I think the art is fantastic. No other DC book looked like this. Nothing else looks like Wonder Woman. The way her body and her face was drawn, because there weren't a lot of other female heroes to draw on, and it's just so, there's just something about it. Like, she's, I guess at the time you might say that she's sexualized because she was showing a lot of skin, but to me she has always looked very, very powerful, and I've always thought that since I was a little kid. And I love that the stories are a bit goofy, but they're also a bit patriotic. You know, Kid Crisis a lot of times have come to me to be like, what are war bonds? What was this thing that she's fighting a real thing, you know, that had to do with World War II? So I just think it's incredibly historic in a way that Superman didn't linger on as long, in a way that Batman did not really do at all. It's in a way a little bit more like a Marvel Golden Age comic book. So I have a great affection for it. I part of me wants to wait until the Omnibus Volume 7 is announced and comes out. I forget, has it been announced? But it hasn't come out yet. Because then we'll have all of it, and that has never even been digital, so I will hit up against a stopping point there. And that probably has been my hesitation all along into digging into it super, super deeply, because I probably was like, oh, I don't know if they're ever going to finish all of them. But now that they do have all but one of the omnibuses out, I do have confidence that I can read all of it, and that is exciting for me. Fifth of Jack Gaming, I'm guessing that would be far back for Wonder Maddie. I don't know if Wonder Maddie likes Golden Age, and also Wonder Maddie is very busy. Like, we've only caught up a couple times in this whole past year, but yeah, I would love to do Wonder Maddie. Possibly as soon as I get here, Kid Crisis might be ready to start broadcasting on her own. You never know. So, and William Lee, good evening to you as well. But yeah, I love Wonder Woman. I love this issue, especially Wonder Woman for President. Okay, number 83. So this is one of those books that I maybe have read more than 50% of this. I was buying Unwritten as it came out. I love Mike Carey, one of my favorite authors. I love the art from Peter Gross, and I was immediately obsessed with it. And I definitely have read 5 or 6 volumes of it, but it was before 2017, so I have no notes, which means I have no recollection. We all know I keep my memory outboard in spreadsheets and presentations. So, I mean, I remember what it's about in a broad way, but I could not tell you anything that happened inside of it, because I'm like a goldfish if I don't write things down. So I want to go back and reread it in the writing things down era. I already know that I love it. I already know that it's gorgeous, and it's just one of those books that I never finished because it got interrupted by the move to New Zealand and packing up all of the books. So I have it, every single page of it that has been ever released. It is all on my shelf, literally right here, right next to me, and I cannot wait to finally get to it if we get down to number 83. Number 82 is probably the book on this list that I know the least about, which is kind of funny. It is Clementine by Tilly Walden. It's a series of 3 OGNs, and the only reason it's on this list is because I was absolutely obsessed with is it Moonbeam or Sunbeam? Moonbeam? On a Moonbeam, which got recommended to me by Wonder Maddie, actually, speaking of, and I was like, well, what's the next Tilly Walden I should read? And everybody said Clementine is the next Tilly Walden you should read. So I know that I can easily get it on a Sunbeam. It says right there on the cover. But I know I can easily get it from the library. I know that it's accessible, and I know I'm probably going to love it, and I'm probably going to love her perspective. So I don't have a whole lot else to say about it. Have any of you read it? Can you tell me anything about it? Because I clearly know nothing. Okay, let's continue. Oh, Kane with series intel. Clementine is a sequel to the Walking Dead games. I recommend watching a Let's Play for those. Are you messing with my mind? It is not. Is it really? Oh my gosh, it says on the cover, Tilly Walden is the future. Her boldly authentic voice brings new heights to the world of The Walking Dead. Well, spoilers on the cover. I had no idea it had anything to do with The Walking Dead. Oh my gosh. Comic Bells, by the way, I saw you earlier saying that you were obsessed with Avengers Alliance. I wonder, did we ever cross paths? Clementine is amazing. I also really love Spinning. That is another one that I have not read. I've only ever read on a Sunbeam. Kane, I cannot believe that is real. I cannot believe that is real. 81 is Darryl Openworld. I think this is one of the ones that I have here. I don't know why I got it. This was in my phase, probably pre-pandemic. I want to say this must be 2018 or 2019. Because this was in my phase where I would just get... No, 2022. I have no excuse. I just saw it and I thought it looked cool. I know why. I remember why. Hold on, let me get my glasses. And now I can finally see what my face looks like. Oh, we did a good job today. Okay. In the open world, Darryl is a legend, the most famous journalist at The Guardian. No story can escape him, and when it comes to reporting the facts, he'll take any risk. But the mystery he faces today is not normal, even for open world, which should be enough reason to abandon the investigation. The magic that regulates the open world is being misused by someone who shows disturbing mastery and whose intentions are unknown. So I love comics about journalism, and I think I also checked out some of the interior art before ordering it, and it was really, really cool looking. And I was just like, you know what, like a one and done OGN with this lovely, I love magnetic press, they have the cool rounded corners. I was like, I'm in. And then it has just sat on my shelf and rotted since I said I'm in, because I totally forgot about it and it's just passed. So this is it. It's a one and done. I literally, again, this is one of those ones that I could just sit down tonight and just read. So why have I not? Well, that's why we need a list, because I have no onboard memory, and if things are not in a list, then I will never know to do them. So that is why it is here. And I will tell you all about it when I finally read it. Okay, number 80, Black Panther, 1966, so Silver Age through the end of his original run of solo appearances in 1980, which is like a couple issues past where the first omnibus ends, but that's just where I would map it to. Black Panther, another character I've had a guide for a long time. I'm very aware of him. I've actually read all of his early appearances in Fantastic Four. I've never sat down and enjoyed, I now have it in every possible format. I have it in Omnibus or Marvel Masterworks up there. I have it behind me in Epic Collection. I've never sat down and read it all together. I believe Fariha and I read some of it on the Black Panther reading club earlier on this channel in like 2019. So I have read some of it, and I actually have read some of it in the post 2017 era, but I never sat down and just read all of it. And of course, we have a picture of him beating up on the Klan here on the cover. How could we avoid it? The next one, again, keeping a similar trend of Marvel books that used to be kind of esoteric to try to gather and figure out how to read, but then Marvel put it in omnibus, and now it is also an Epic Collection, so I have it all, is all of Black Widow from the Silver Age all the way up to 1998. Now, Black Widow never ever had a solo titled series in that period. However, she did appear as one of the stories in many issues of Amazing Adventures. She also was a co-star in Daredevil. I might include some of that in this read, even though that's not necessarily in our omnibus. She also had a run of significant issues in Marvel Fanfare. And then she also had a series of original graphic novels, which actually used to be very, very hard to come by. And now they've been reprinted in that omnibus and those Epic Collections. It just feels like an oversight to me that I just really don't know anything about Black Widow prior to 1999. And I think a lot of people didn't, because her comics were not collected. And who was out there looking for Daredevil Black Widow Abattoir as a read? Probably not a lot of people. So I feel very blessed that I now have the ability to do that very easily, and on Marvel Unlimited, since it's been collected. And why would I not? Yeah, why would I not? Reaper XC, we've got both same weather on both sides of the ditch. It is apocalyptic today. I actually was going to try to do triathlon training earlier in the day, like bright and early before this, but it was crazy. Wind gusts here yesterday in my neighborhood got up to 120 kilometers per hour. And at one of the weather stations, I was over 200 kilometers per hour. So I would not have survived on a bike. However, in that wind, I did decide to go on a 10K walk yesterday. Perhaps not advisable. So I think I got my exercise in, and there's certainly not going to be any today. Superdrop, please tell me, what were the highlights of Black Widow in your binge? We need a Black Widow earlier omnibus. We have it. It exists. It's Black Widow Strikes. It's a thing. It happened. Okay. I'd like to point out we're only a quarter of the way through and it's been about an hour, but that includes like technical difficulties and stuff. Okay, this is a run that I love. And if you watch Near Mint Condition and you watched us talk about the solicitation of the omnibus of this, you saw me battle mightily with the idea of if I would buy the omnibus or not, because I have a lot of this in singles. It is Ghost Rider 1991 through 27 by Howard Mackie. Why 1 through 27? Because 28 starts the Rise of the Midnight Suns, when they turn this Ghost Rider title into a whole line that has things like Morbius and Blade as part of the line. Blade, of course, and Night Stalkers. I want to read that too. It's lower on my list. This is one where I was like, ooh, this is a very discreet piece. It's only 27 issues. It's a solid 2 years. It only has, I think, 2 crossovers, one to Doctor Strange and one to X-Men, which of course I've read 100 times. So it's very contained. And this is one of those ones where I've probably read the first 3 or 4 issues of this like 5 times. And I've probably paged through several of them many times because it has appearances from other characters where I have guides, but I just have never sat down and read it sequentially. So I'm actually much more aware of this than a lot of other things that I haven't read sequentially on the list. But also it's fantastic. And the art is so good. The reason I am so tempted by the omnibus is because I love the interior art. I remember being a kid and not even really liking Ghost Rider all that much, but like having some of these issues just from like random grab bags or whatever, and just staring at the art, and the colors in this were so cool. And it pretty much ends with that X-Men crossover. So I know there's like a special treat at the end for me, which is that I get to reread the X-Men crossover, having read all of the Ghost Rider up to that point. All of the Midnight Sun stuff is on my list. Again, my whole list is 600 books long. So Darkhold's on my list, Night Stalker's on my list, Morbius is on my list. I mean, I was thinking like, oh, should I start by only counting down like 101 to 200? But no, you want to see the good stuff. But like, I could come back and do 6 more of these people. There's some crazy stuff down there in 500 to 600. Okay, yeah, Texiera is the artist on a lot of those interiors. Random grab bags is how I got into Ghost Rider too. Did you have the Sears Roebuck catalog comic starter pack that came with like a printed comic box that held 100 comics? It came with like 20 assorted comics. That's where I got my copy of Uncanny X-Men 266. And it came with a short box that had like Marvel Heroes on the side. And I eventually had to throw it out because it just fell to pieces. But that was my original short box for comics. And Paul Gunram saying the artwork is always the selling point of Ghost Rider. Cedric and Ellen saying this is one of the 2 series I collected when I found a shop that sold American comics, Salteras and Texiera. Okay, number 77. I was surprised that this popped up here because I'm not a big give a shit about Alan Moore in general, but this is one that's high because of the significance score. I don't think I'm going to have a ton of fun reading it. I've read limited issues of this. I'm not the biggest Alan Moore fan. It has a time and a place. Sometimes I enjoy him. I don't necessarily want to sit down and binge read Alan Moore all the time. I'm not saying he's bad. There's not one of these Crisis hates so-and-so. Don't turn it into that. He's not somebody who delights me in a 20 issue, sequence, in a 20 issue quantity. And this is more like, what is it? Like 40 issues? So 60 maybe. I know clearly it's in my guide and it says that. So I was kind of surprised, but even though the fun factor is relatively low and even though it's relatively long, I really feel I should have read it by now in full. And I really think it's significant to read because it does so much for the origins of the way we write superheroes now, as does all of Alan Moore's work in the 1980s. And so eventually it's all worth reading. And so I was really surprised. I really didn't think it was going to crack the top 100, but just on the power of math alone, it is up here. Superchop saying, it is the best comic I read in the past 3 years. Wow, that is high praise. And Richard Bradley saying this might be Moore's best work, one of my all-time favorite runs. And that's why it's up here. Maybe I will have a lot of fun. What if it's a lot of fun? That might change my opinions about everything. Okay. But I'm not reading that recolored nonsense, so I guess I'm going to have to read it digitally because I think the original colors are digital. I haven't looked into it that deeply, but I guess I'll read it on DC Infinite. Or if they put out an omnibus of original colors, I would maybe get the chance. Lance McNair going back, saying, never gotten to Ghost Rider, but loves Swamp Thing, but Logan Wayne has never read this either. Fantastic Four 1961. Now, this comes with a major caveat. When I first started getting collected editions, in 2010, I was just trying to catch up on X-Men. And that was only like 5 or 6 months of 2010. Then we got to 2011, and I realized there was so much more out there. The first thing I decided to do, other than just collect X-Men books, literally, the first thing, before I looked into anything else, I saw that what Marvel Masterworks were, and I bought Marvel Masterworks Fantastic Four Volume 1, which is back when the Masterworks were very slim, not because of paper quality. This is actually very high paper quality because they barely were putting anything in them. This only had 10 issues. And I had it on my bedside table, And every night I would read one issue before I went to sleep. And these issues are dense. If you have never read original Fantastic Four, they are each a novel. Even for Silver Age, even if you're used to reading Silver Age comic books, you are not ready for how dense Fantastic Four is. I know there's other ones that are more dense, but it's just, even the way that Stan Lee structures it and Kirby structures it, it reads like a book. I want to say I got to 4 or 5. Yeah, because are these in the... I must have gotten to 3 because 4 is still in the shrink wrap. So I made it about 30 issues into Fantastic Four. And then, you know, I had Kid Krisis. I got my job at a startup. Life happened. And so I never kept reading it. Now, I've read a lot of other individual issues that are a part of that run. I've read the whole, like, 40s into 50s. Phew. Oh, there goes the makeup, right? Right off my face. I've read the Black Panther intro. I've read the Coming of Galactus. I've read some later Inhuman stuff. I read so many singles, but I've never bridged the gap from reading from 1 to 27 on through the rest of it. Now, this is long. So for this to be this high on my list, you know that I want to read it bad. Of course, nothing is more significant. I know I'm going to enjoy it. And that all makes up for the fact that we're talking about 104 issues of comic books. But I love. I loved the Fantastic Four that I did read, Jonah Paul's. It's incredible. I think if you're talking about readable Silver Age comic books, I mean, you have to have patience because it's not a quick read. But I don't think there's anything more readable than this in the Silver Age other than probably Spider-Man. Yeah, and I don't have the affinity for Spider-Man that I do for Fantastic Four. So yeah, and Andrew's saying, I feel like I stopped right before it got great. Yeah. Possibly. Ryan, hello friend, read the previous Swamp Thing issues before Moore takes over and it makes more sense. Oh, interesting. See, that is on my list, but it's lower on the list because I'm not excited about Swamp Thing and Moore's is more significant. So the algorithm took it higher. But I mean, so I might start reading and be like, oh, I really do need to read those issues that come before. So again, this is a great example of one where I've actually read, I guess if you include all the singles, I'm probably very close to having read 50% of this, but never sequentially and never in the note-taking era. Yeah. Number 75, Hellboy. Now, Hellboy was in my first order from in-stock trades. I had been ordering from Cheap Graphic Novels to 2014. Or no, to 2014. And because that's just who I had found. That their SEO was good and I found them and I started ordering from them. And then I found in-stock trades and I was like, is this real? Is this site real? Because their site just always seemed very strange to me back in the day. And they had a big sale. And I remember the first thing I tried ordering from them, because I was like, why not? Was the Hellboy library editions. And for a very long time, they were right next to my bed. I had a stack of 3 books next to my bed. It was a Fantastic Four Masterworks, a Hellboy library edition, and a Sandman Absolute. And we all know that I don't like reading absolutes, so that got nowhere. I didn't really start digging into Sandman until I got the deluxes. But Hellboy, I have read the first 4 issues of that first library edition, no lie, 6 times. I never get past them. Maybe Hellboy is not for me, but I at least can read the whole first library edition. I literally have all of it. I buy the entire Hellboy universe. Why? Because I'm a crazy person. I don't know why, but I have every deluxe edition that have ever come out, whether it's the library editions or like the nice hardcovers of all the BPRD. I have all of it. And they're all on my list. BPRD, Abe Sapien, Lobster Johnson, even the like fringe stuff like Witchfinder. I have it all and it's all on my list. But it all comes down to, am I ever going to read Hellboy? And I know that a lot of people think BPRD is better than Hellboy, and maybe it is. But one day, I'm actually going to make it to the end of that first library edition or die trying, perhaps. So that is Hellboy at number 75 as we hit the 1 hour mark. Oh God, what have I gotten myself into? Okay, Richard Bradley's saying, I'm slowly working through a reading order of the whole Mignolaverse, where the first 2 Hellboy omnibuses in the short story collections. BPRD Omnibus 1 is in the pile. And Ryan saying the first series of Hellboy, thought it was just okay, never read any more, but I want to read more, but I heard it gets better. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I've heard that it gets better, and so that's why I don't want to just give up. This is a run that previously was very hard to read because Alpha Flight by Bill Mantlo had never been reprinted. It had never, and since it was never reprinted, it was never on Marvel Unlimited. It's still not on Marvel Unlimited, but an omnibus is coming soon, an Alpha Flight by Mantlo and Lee omnibus, which was one of my top 10 on the omnibus poll. And honestly, even though I've never read every issue of the John Byrne Alpha Flight, I know Alpha Flight well enough that I will have no problem kept picking up and reading from here. And I just John Byrne can be hit or miss for me. I'm not that I like him or dislike him, but I'm much more excited to read Bill Mantlo. I just think that's going to be way, way more my speed. So I do have this in singles because, again, I never thought any of Alpha Flight would ever get collected. So I somehow found a whole run of it, I think for like under $200, because it was just at the time that Marvel Comics had not really spiked in price on eBay. And so I have all of it in singles. So I could sit down and read it now, but I'm like, well, I'm about to have the omnibus in a couple of months, so I will read it. I could not tell you if this or Byrne is better, because I've never read all of Byrne, and I've never read all of this. James Abel wishes they would combine Hellboy and BPRD together in a reading order. I don't think they've ever mixed that peanut butter and jelly. Next is Daredevil, the first year of Daredevil, 1998, by Smith and Quesada, Kevin Smith and Joe Quesada, at number 73. This is a victim of collecting formats, because there was a time that there was like a hardcover or two soft covers, or a soft cover that didn't have the half issue or something. I just remember being really annoyed at trying to collect this. And at that same time, the Bendis complete collections or ultimate collections, whatever they were at that time, were everywhere. They were super readily available. They would come out of print and then go back into print. And I remember it was one time that just one of them had gone out of print. And I was like, I'm just going to get the Bendis ones and read it. I'm not going to wait to read this other thing. Argle, bargle, grumble, grumble. Plus, there's that David Mack stuff right at the beginning of Bendis. And it annoyed me that I was going to have to skip around that too. So I was just like, I'm just going to start with Bendis. So of course, I'm aware of this. Of course, I've paged through this. Of course, I know generally what happens in every issue of this, because it's just one of those comics that I think is in the general knowledge of the zeitgeist at that time. I have never sat down and read it, and it's not that long, and I've literally read every issue of Daredevil after this to present day, which I cannot say a lot. I don't know if there's any other Marvel comic book that launched in 1998 that I've read every issue to present day. Let me think about that. Wolverine, I've read every issue from 2003 to present day. This might be the Marvel comic book that I've read the longest unbroken streak of. So yeah, I want to just like dial back another year and pick it up a little bit earlier. And I know, of course, that this is awesome and everybody loves it. Ryan Wilson getting us some intel here. Mantlo and Byrne switched titles. Mantlo left Hulk and went to Alpha Flight. I read the first few issues because Lady Deathstrike appears in X-Men, but nothing else. Loved Mantlo's Hulk, though. Yeah. And Smith Daredevil is new for me. Yeah, I know it has some cringy aspects of it. That is part of what I'm aware of. But then on the other hand, we have Paul Gundram saying it's an awesome run. So sad that Kevin Smith couldn't stay on time. Well, I mean, that is just the Kevin Smith of it all. But yeah, some definite competing opinions in the chat. Number 72 is Motor Girl by Terry Moore. Now, I have only read most of Rachel Rising, and then I read 5 Years, and I want to say I've also read Serial. So I think what happened was I started reading 5 Years, and I realized that it had characters from all the other Terry Moore books because they're all in the same universe. So I was like, well, I know everybody loves Rachel Rising, so let me read Rachel Rising. And I loved Rachel Rising. I binged it, and I think I took a break because I had to like do a pull list or something, and then I just never finished the very end of it. So that's why it's on my in-progress runs list. So looking through the other Terry Moore that I still could read, Strangers in Paradise is just so long and so intimidating. And this is actually quite short. So I kind of just want to read all of Terry Moore. I love his cartooning. I think he's a really interesting writer. I love everything about him. I've only ever read him digitally, even though I know that there's some really nice hardcovers. I just never took the time to chase them down. So this is just like the next one. Plus this is intriguing to me because it's the most fantastical. Rachel Rising does have like dead people, I suppose, but like there's an ape in this one. Like it's just more fantastical than the other ones. So I am very, very interested to read it. Every Terry Moore is on my list, but Strangers in Paradise is much longer, and I didn't know a good way to split it up, so it's much lower because the length just killed it in the algorithm. So spoilers, Strangers in Paradise is not in the top 100. Lance owns Motor Girl on hardcover and reminded that he needs to read it. Cedric Allen says I should start with Strangers in Paradise. No, it's too long, too intimidating. As I said, a lot of it, not that I'm gonna follow this list. Like, we know me, I will just pick up some random thing and read it. But the goal is that I should try to eliminate things in the top 100 if I can, and there are a lot of shorter things in the top 100 because the algorithm preferred that. Now, let's talk about a book I've always wanted to read that they do not make easy, and that is The Tick from, what is his name? Edlund, but it's not the Edlund that's Freddy Krueger. It's a different Edlund. Ben Edlund? Anyway, here's the thing about The Tick. When I first started doing indie comic guides, which was like 2 or 3 years ago now, the tick was going to be the first non-image guide that I was going to do. So I went through, you know, League of Comic Book Geeks. I had old information that I'd saved from Comic Book DB. I went to comics.org, and I tried to make sense of the release of the tick. And what I discovered was it does not make any sense at all. There's no reading order. There's tons of individual issues. The stuff that's in print just comes and goes and comes and goes. So I've got books here. I'm looking through them. I'm just trying to find one that has that cover in it. I think this is the first one, because this has when he was just doing the tears. He was just doing as part of the New England Comics newsletter. And then he spun it out into its own series. Of course, many of us know the Tick because we watched it as a Saturday morning cartoon on Fox when we were kids. So here's like his original pinup of the Tick. So this clearly comes first. Tick the Complete Edlund. Then I also have the Tick Big Blue Destiny. And then I also have Tick and Arthur Complete Works. And I don't think any of these overlap with each other, but there's also a bunch of other Tick, some of which has never been collected, some of which has been collected, but they've never reissued the paperback. So I'm always looking on DCBS and In Stock Trades and Amazon and anywhere, and as soon as one of them comes in the print, I'm like, yes, I'll take it, give it to me. But I really would like to finish that guide, but it's just hard because I've never read the Tick, because I can't read the Tick, because it's not available digitally. And so it's kind of like a catch-22. Most things I either have the comics already, and so I can make the guide while I'm paging through the comics, or the comics are available digitally, so as I'm doing the guide, I'm like either purchasing or browsing the digital comics on an all-you-can-eat service to kind of like figure things out as I go. I never make a guide where I have no access to the comics. That is just not a thing that I do. That's hopefully why my guides are so good and why you guys like them, because I like literally will never just, I could name some websites. I could name some people who make guides just looking at what books are out on Amazon, and that's just the guide. That does not happen on Crushing Crisis. So the reason there's no Tick guide is, how can I make a Tick guide when there's no guide to Tick? Okay. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess I might finish the guide just from the bibliographical perspective of like what order did these come out in, and I'll disclaim like this is not necessarily a reading order, although I don't think there's a lot of back and forth. I think mostly they read in the order they came out, and then I can make like a checklist or something and figure out what's actually in these books. And I know there are some other books that I don't have. So and by the way, are they even the same size? No, one of them is bigger, I guess, because I don't know if you can see this, one of them is wider than the other one, same height, different width, but I guess that's just maybe the width of the comics were. I have no idea. So it's just a big friggin' mystery to me, and I'm stubborn, so the more mysterious it is to me, the higher I want to go towards reading the Tick. And the chat went crazy. Spoon! Superjob posted a spoon! James Abel saying, we need a reprint of the Tick. Kane remembers the cartoon of the Tick. Logan Wayne watched and loved the animated show and didn't even know it was a comic book character. Did anybody watch the live action one with, what's his name, Patrick Warburton? I've never actually seen that one. And D. Marcel, I've lost track. What is this, your 13th stream, 14th? I don't know. I was trying to think last night if you were to turn up, because I don't think you were here last week. Yeah. And I was thinking last week, oh, what number would this have been for you? So now I've lost track. I'm sorry. Okay. Ryan Wilson, never been a Tick fan. I'm a dog lover. I hate ticks. Okay. Now we're still not even 2/3 of the way through. I have an intense fascination with Paul Chadwick's Concrete. I don't have it physically. I want it physically. It's very hard to come by in New Zealand. So I guess I'll have to win like an eBay. I do think it's all been reprinted in Dark Horse omnibuses. I have the frame of a guide sketched out. It's just this rock guy, and it's kind of like from what I understand, because I've never read it, I've seen some interior pages, but it's almost like a ecological approach to, he's not a superhero, he's kind of just like there, and a lot of the stuff has a lot to do with climate and the earth, and I love that. It seems, and again, I know nothing about it, but it almost seems like it's going to be similar to Swamp Thing, but it's also going to have like a very kind of like, I don't know, like ecological and green vibe to it, and it just seems like it's going to be a little bit contemplative. I love Paul Chadwick's art, but yeah, I want to read it so bad. Yarner Paul is saying, I'm also obsessed with Concrete. I want to read it so bad. Jamie C47 is saying the cover has completely grasped me. This is Paul Chadwick. I think he draws and writes. Yeah, his copyright's on it. It was originally from 1996. Andrew saying Concrete is another I've been collecting in single issues. It just seems interesting. Yeah, I just want to read it. And the thing is, I have an intense interest in indie books that were like formative indie books when indie comics really were starting to be prominent and noticed in the mid 80s. So like this is around that same time that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started coming out. And I really am interested in that era. It's something I feel like I should know more about as like a person who considers myself a historian of comic books. And at the time, as a kid in a comic book store, like your local comic book store that mine literally had Venom painted on the front of the store, they were not carrying a lot of Concrete from 1986. So these are things that I need to like go back and rediscover. Yeah, Super Job. Any kind of legendary Dark Horse series. Concrete, Monkey... Oh, I don't know if I have Monkey Man and O'Brien. I need to write that down somewhere because... Well, I don't have anything to write. Well, I'll just see it when I rewatch the stream. Nexus... Next Men, anything that kind of was in that era of Dark Horse and publishers at that time, I have an intense interest to kind of go back and reevaluate or just evaluate for the first time. However, Reaper has actually read it and chimes in. The first 8 through issues they enjoyed, but after that got repetitive, not what I expected when I started, and it was really good to start. Interesting. Oh yeah, Paul Gundram, I am so hyped for Ghost to start being a compendium. That, spoilers, that just missed my top 100. I think it was like 110 or something like that. Really excited to read that. Okay, let's continue. Number 69, Astro City. I have it right here behind a whole row of epics, so I'm not going to take it out. For a long time, you had to go back and find those old hardcovers of it, and it was really prohibitive to find. Now we can all have it on our shelves, and I do, completely. I've read the first arc, but I think I was reading it digitally, or like I had like an old I don't even remember how I read it, and it just was not a pleasant experience. However I was reading it, like I remember not being able to get into it. Maybe whatever I was reading, the color reproduction wasn't great. I don't remember. But I love superhero worlds that are independent outside of the big two. I generally find Kurt Busiek to be really, really interesting, and I just really want to finally read it. I know it's coming out in omnibus, and it's going to be gigantic, and maybe I'm going to buy it, but it really feels like I should read the first Metro book before I buy the omnibus. Ryan Wilson saying it's on the top of my to-read list. I'm just waiting on that omnibus to come out, and Jamie C47, very high on their list as well. Number 68, Again, this is one of those ones that I actually know really well, and I've never sat and read cover to cover. When I started reading Spider-Man, I collected Spider-Man back in the 90s, and when I got back into X-Men and then Fantastic Four, I really didn't think I was going to start buying Spider-Man. Then, I think as Sinister Spider-Man got announced, I was like, oh, I might want to catch up and read that. And so I found a lot on eBay of every one of, I want to say they were the premier hardcovers, all the way from the end of JMS all the way to the beginning of Slot. So I have all this. And then, of course, now there's Brand New Day complete collections, which are probably even better than having all those hardcovers. And of course, it's all on Marvel Unlimited. But I've actually, over time, read a lot of the stuff in this because it's got so many character appearances. So I've read some of it for my Black Cat guide. I've read some of it for my Craven guide. I've read some of it for, there's another guide. Daredevil is in some of these issues. I've just read so many of it, and this truly, I think, is my favorite Spider-Man run. And this is encompassing a lot because this starts on 558, and in my mind, it goes all the way through the gauntlet leading right up to Dan Slott. So this is one of the longest runs that actually made it into my top 100, which shows you how badly I just want to sit down and read all of it sequentially because it's just something that I already know that I like. And so I really just want to read it all in one go and really, really enjoy it. You're saying, who's the pink guy tweaking on the cover? I do not know. Okay, number 67, Captain Britain. Now here's another one where I have it all because I had it even before the reissued omnibus. I had it in the original 2 oversized hardcovers and the Alan Moore omnibus, which got very hard to find before they all smushed it together in the reissued omnibus, something Marvel very rarely does. And I actually read, I want to say, the entire first oversized hardcover, and I used to have a trade paperback collecting the Alan Davis parts of this back in the 90s because they released it in support of Excalibur when Excalibur started getting really hot and Alan Davis returned to Excalibur, or maybe even it was when he was on it with Chris Claremont. But I've never sat down and read all of it. So what's funny is I've read the Claremont stuff and I've read the Davis stuff at the end, and I've never actually read all of the Alan Moore stuff in the middle, which is like what created the Marvel multiverse formally. That is wild. And I have it, but I've just never sat down and paid the attention to it. So I just need to. And it was one of those things where there was a point that I did read everything as I bought it. Like I bought that first oversized hardcover and I was just like reading it. And then I started escalating and I couldn't read everything that was coming to the house. And then I had a kid and et cetera, et cetera. And I just never got to it. But I'm aware of all those issues. I paged through them all for my Captain Britain guide, but I just need to sit down and read it. And I love it. I mean, I love all Captain Britain. I've always enjoyed it. I love all those writers. I love all the art. It is so entertains me. As we get to the 1/3 point here at 1 hour and 20 minutes, it's Godzilla the Marvel Years, which I actually have right here. Look at that big boy. You've heard me talk about this many times before if you've watched me on Near Mint Condition streams. I truly thought there would never be a way to read this. And Godzilla was integrated into the Marvel Universe similarly to Rom, similarly to the Micronauts. I mean, there's the Avengers in here, there's the Fantastic Four in here, but it's also got all of the classic Godzilla stuff in here too. So it's not just like he's fighting Marvel heroes, but the Marvel heroes are very much a part of the story and they appear here in continuity. I'm trying to find a page that has some Marvel. Oh, here's Dum Dum Dugan on this page. So I've just always wanted to read it. In fact, do I have the essentials? I might. No, I think I missed getting the essentials. And I've just never sat down and read it all. And here it is on my shelf. Again, this is what, 23 issues? 24 issues. That's what? 2 days of reading for me of issues of that era. Why have I not sat down and read it? Because there's never been a list to help me put things in order, and that's why I need to do it. Edwin Billiot saying Godzilla was more enjoyable than I thought it would be. There were so many guest stars. Okay, folks. If you watched the show last week, you know that I now have in my possession I didn't choose the actual cover, Lucifer in Omnibus. And that is because A, I thought it would motivate me to finish Sandman finally, and B, I love Mike Carey. I love everything I've ever read by Mike Carey. He has no flops as far as I'm concerned. And so, I knew I had one that had that cover on it. So why would I not finally read this? And I'm a little bit nervous that anything related to Sandman is not going to be reprinted again for a long, long time. So I went a little bit crazy and I ordered them and now I finally have them. But of course I already had it in trade paperback. Did I read it? No, because I kept saying, I'm going to read Sandman. I'm going to read Sandman. Well, that's why on Omnidog stream, if you watched it last week, everybody told me of all of my in-progress runs, I have to finish Sandman. And last week on this show, when I debuted those in my Haul Around the World, my good internet buddy, Robert Secundus, said he would actually co-read it with me. And I really, really would love to have an excuse to do any hanging out with Robert Secundus. So I am very, very excited to finally get to Lucifer. Ryan Wilson just ordered them yesterday. Ryan Wilson saying it is 50% off at Amazon right now. And D. Marcel chiming in with the official count, it's actually his 16th live. He was quiet for 2 of them, throwing off my count. And Nikki saying the art on the cover looks really nice. Yeah, well, I mean, you really, truly can't go wrong. Okay, number 64. Wait, did we miss one? No, 65, 64. This is another one of those books that I've read so much, but before 2017. Mind Management by Matt Kindt. This is the original mind-bending Matt Kindt book, and he drew it as well. It's about this young woman who's looking for her father and discovers this whole secret spy agency that maybe she's also a member of. So it's got kind of like this hypnotized, but maybe not, but secret, but maybe not spy angle, kind of like Alias, kind of like Dollhouse, but it's also just about relationships and your family. And I absolutely loved it. I bought everything Matt Kindt did for years after I started reading this, only to discover I don't love everything Matt Kindt does, like I love this book. Also, I wish I had them in this room, but I'm almost certain they're down the stacks. They're actually my favorite form factor, I think, of anything. They're a standard size hardcover from Dark Horse. They're a beautiful matte wrapped style of hardcover. They're really pleasant to hold in the hand. I know they've released it in other formats since then, but there's a lot of things in the book that are upside down and sideways, so you have to turn it a lot. So I really like the idea of a hardcover because I think you want something that you can firmly handle and turn without it like bending and creasing. And I already know that I love it, but it's from before my note-taking era. And so I really want to go back and read it in my note-taking era so I can remember more about it. Dr. Zero, I had the board game. I kickstarted it. And I remember they made it so that it was only going to play with the app, or the app was like so integrated that you had to use the app for everything in the game. And I remember writing them to be like, I don't use a phone in my house. I never have my phone in the house. So saying the game is only mostly playable if you're going to use a phone, they're like, yeah, it's really cool. And I'm like, okay. And I sold it the next day. So somebody else in New Zealand has my copy of the Mind Management Gain. Brian Wilson, Mind Management is good. The sequel just came out a few years ago. I couldn't read it because I forgot what happened in the original run and felt lost. Or did they want you to forget? Okay, let's continue to number 63, Planetary. This may be, I can't say for sure because I have the memory of a goldfish. This may be the one book in the top 100 that I have completely read every single issue of. But here's the thing. I was reading Planetary in trade paperback before I was back to reading comics, because I had picked up Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men in Tower Records as it was coming out. And then I discovered I really liked John Cassaday. I had a vague recollection of who Warren Ellis was from reading Excalibur back in the 90s, because that's, to me, who I wasn't around for him getting famous. I was only around for him in Excalibur. I don't even think I was already gone when he started writing Stormwatch. So I just saw, oh, this is John Cassaday and Warren Ellis. I remember him. So, and it was on the spinner rack at the front of Tower Records in like 2006 or 7. So I bought the first trade paperback and I wound up just reading it in trade paperbacks as they came out. And that was 3 years before I started collecting comics. And I just remember I used to have a tiny bookcase in my studio that mostly was like music stuff. And I just had the 4 volumes of Astonishing X-Men and then the 4 volumes of Planetary when Planetary finally finished. Then when I got into comic books, like, again, like all this whole production, I got the original Absolutes, which were 2 Absolutes. I know since then it's been put out in a single Absolute as well as in an omnibus. I have not seen those trades in years. I think maybe I must have lent them to somebody, but I still have the Absolutes, and I just feel like I know so much more about comics history now. I know so much more about the medium and the storytelling aspect of it now that I've learned through reading for almost the past 20 years. I just feel like I'm going to get so much more out of it reading it a second time than I got the first time. So I'm just really, really excited to go back to it and enjoy it again. And I absolutely loved it. I bought it for other people as gifts. It's one of my favorite comic books of all time. William Lee says it's overrated, and I wouldn't disagree with you. I think people talk about it like it's the second coming in a similar way that they talk about Watchmen, but I think they're being very deliberate in the way that they structure that. And because each story is so one-off, it's kind of like, in a way, even if you don't like a couple of them, many of them will hit for you. But in a way, also for a modern reader, it's kind of like, but there's no story. But then you get to the end and you're like, oh, but there kind of is a story. It's just very unique. It's very, very unique. There's really nothing else like it. Okay. Number 62, a book that you've heard me talk about many times and actually is one of the most popular videos on this channel. I cannot explain why. It just is. Tomb of Dracula. I have all 3 of the Tomb of Dracula omnibuses. I read pretty deep into the first one back in the day, and I think I was still trying to find the second one, right? The second one was really hard to find for a long time, or maybe it still is. And so I kind of stopped because I was like, well, I guess we're going to have to wait. Famously, I forget if it was the first one or second one, but it's one of the only 10 books I've ever paid over cover price for. And I love it. I mean, I love Dracula stuff. Love, 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 love Dracula stuff. And it's a fantastic comic book. It has Gene Colan's art. It's just incredible. If you've never read it, I mean, it's Dracula in the Marvel Universe, but it's much like the novel Dracula. It's Dracula as Dracula himself, but it also does follow Dracula as just this terrible villain, but also like all of the people that he's constantly thwarting. It's just a really unusual book, a villain-focused book that Marvel and DC just doesn't often do. It's absolutely gorgeous. There's 72 regular issues, plus some giant-size issues, plus if you're going to get into the third omnibus, then there's magazine issues of it. I would like to read all of it. And again, this is a relatively long run that's in my top 100 just because I already know that I like it. And I'm like, oh, why would I not keep reading it? Why did I give up? Okay. Yeah, Reaper, that's why I was so excited for Kid Crisis to read Golden Age Wonder Woman, because it's very appropriate right now with all the response to authoritarianism and fascism, and we have absolutely talked about that together. An epic collection of Tomb of Dracula would be nice, especially since I guess they're not going to finish the Masterworks. Okay, talking about how this list is embarrassing. part of the algorithm gives credit to runs that I've already read some of to like encourage me to keep reading them and finish them. And I have the first trade of this Boundless Comics Lady Death. Here's the thing. You've heard me talk about reading the Kickstarter era of Lady Death, which is a new continuity yet again that started in like 2017 or 2018. Those are just titty comics, right? There's really nothing to them. This, even though it's not the best comics ever, this is actually like a real textured Lady Death story, and it's got some really cool art, and I just have affection for this character from the 90s. Now, actually, what I thought was going to rank higher in my top 100 is the actual original Lady Death, but I did a tally of it, and I don't have my spreadsheet in front of me, but it's actually over 100 issues, and none of it is digital. And it's so hard to get comic books in New Zealand from the States. If I was just in the States, I could just do one order from like eBay or my comic shop and probably knock it all out, but it would take some time. So unfortunately, even though there's nothing in the algorithm for how much of a pain in my ass is it going to be to read this book, that is a factor in terms of like, I guess my desire, because if I know it's going to be hard to get and expensive, my desire is lower, and that lowers the place in the algorithm. This is something I already have access to and something I mildly enjoyed, and so I just like to finish it. And I'm sorry, I know it's a titty comic even at its best, but I just have some affection for Lady Death. Edwin Billy says, my best friend, who's also gay, loves Lady Death. And Novark saying, I miss the Chaos Comic era of Polito's characters every time I hear Lady Death's name. Yeah, they really had something special in the 90s, and I do think they briefly recaptured it at Boundless. And now with Dynamite having some of the old Chaos stuff and Polito doing his own Lady Death, I just think the magic is gone from those characters, but it was something very cool. And of course, she originally debuted in Evil Ernie. Okay, now we're at number 60, letter 44. This was my introduction to Charles Soule. It was an independent comic he did with Raphael Albuquerque at Oni Press. And I remember being so addicted to this that this was a book that when I would walk from the train down my street to my house in the States, if this had just come out, I remember reading it as I walked because I was so glued to it that I couldn't even wait the literal 2.5 minutes it took from my train stop to my house to put down the book because I was so intensely interested. It's a version of the United States that is having some problems, so that's a little bit relatable right now. And they discover some things in space, some of which they choose to disclose to the public in order to get the public on their side, and some of which they choose to not disclose to the public in order to get the public on their side. I am a big politics junkie. I think it comes through a little bit in my social commentary on the streams, but it doesn't always come through in my reading because it's like, how many great comic books about politics are there in the modern day? I'm not saying this is all a politics comic, but there's definitely some political parody or satire or commentary in this, and it's also some really cool sci-fi. There are some cringy elements. I remember there's this whole thing about like which one of the two astronauts is sleeping with the one lady astronaut. I probably got like to the final volume before it became pack up to go to New Zealand time. So, but again, it was before I was taking notes. So I have no true recollection of this because I was not taking notes as I read it. Cedric and Ellen talking about reading Quit Lady Death when it's published by Boundless, too expensive. The Chaos and Crushton runs are great. Again, if I could find a way to get them all in New Zealand, we all know that if I went to America for one day, which is seeming less and less likely, I would have 2 empty suitcases and an empty guitar case, and I would come back with a Taylor 700 series guitar, the complete collected every single issue of Ultraverse, and all of Lady Death. This is all well known. Lance McNair, I was reading Lance's comic as I was clicking on the super drop. I have read Ex Machina, Machina, which is a great political comic, is by Brian K. Vaughan. Somebody earlier was just saying that something started and didn't go in the direction they thought it would. I think it was somebody it was Reaper talking about Concrete, maybe. That's how I felt about Ex Machina. I felt at the beginning, I was so interested and I loved the political aspect. And then it kind of felt like Vaughn took a turn a little bit away from that and it never quite fulfilled the promise of the original part of the run. But I always feel that way in Brian K. Vaughan. Every Brian K. Vaughan comic book I've ever read that's longer than 10 issues, I have felt that way. Lance McNair had a Lady Cheesecake hardcover and sold it. It was too deathy for me. Sorry, Lady Death hardcover. It was too cheesecakey. So yeah. Okay. Let's continue to number 59, Iron Fist, the early years. So technically, Iron Fist's own series is only 15 issues long, But, of course, he was in some Marvel premiere before that, and he's also in some other supporting material in a book that I feel like I take off the shelf constantly during these streams, because it's not in the Epic collection, which is this, even though it has a cover that looks like a painted version of one of the covers of the actual Iron Fist run, but he has all this black and white material as well. So I forget if that new Early Years Omnibus incorporates this material or not. I totally don't remember. But I do know that if I were to read these two things together, that I would pretty much have read all of Iron Fist. And I love Iron Fist. I think Byrne's artwork here is great. I just think it's really fun and kinetic. I think part of why people have affection for this character all of these years later is because that original comic was so good. And I truly can say I think I've read every issue of it, but never sequentially, never in my note-taking run, never, because so many stars. The Sabretooth appears, the X-Men appears, Misty Knight, there's so many characters to track through those books, and I just have never sat down and do it, but I think it's outstanding. I can already tell you it's great. If you've been waiting to read it, read it, and if I've been waiting to read it, okay. Next, talking about comics, I have 4 versions of this in my cart from eBay. So this is The Vengeance of Vampirella, the original 1990s run. Here's the thing. I have all of the Vampirella archives back here, and they are on my list, but it's a lot of reading, so it's not in the top 100 because the algorithm punished it for being too long. I also have, possibly also right here, hope the side of my hair is looking good today. Oh, they're on the next shelf. I also have I think the side of my hair is looking good today. Hey. Okay. I also have all the Vampirella Masters, which start collecting when Harris revived her in the 1990s, but it collects around this, which is her longest running series of that period. So I could sit down and read all the Masters, but of course you always want what you cannot have, and this has never been fully collected. Now, Tom Snigalski came back and did a sequel to this for Dynamite in like 2019 or 2020, and I loved it. And it was like that many real-time years later past the original series. So then I was like, oh shit, now I want to really, really read the original series. So of course, I have all those archives. Am I reading those right now? No. I finally bought all 8 Master trade paperbacks. Am I reading those? No. Did I get the Dynamite Years Omnibus? Do I also have that? Yes. Am I reading that? No. What's in my top 100? The one I can't have. That's the one in my top 100. But I could get this to New Zealand pretty easily and not super, super expensive. The only thing holding me back is there's a couple of like one-shots and promo issues, like halves and stuff, and I don't want to have to buy them one at a time. So some of the lots will have the halves, but then they don't have issue 25 because the people know if they sell issue 25 on its own, it's going to be like $50 on its own. And I'm not playing that game. But then the ones that have 1 through 25 are just people who legit have it and want to sell it, but they don't have the half issue. So I'm kind of like waiting to like sniper the one that has all of the issues in it. But I really, really, really want to read it. Cedric and Ellen, who are really coming through with the knowledge on this, saying the Harris comics of Vampirella are good. I have all of them, and it made me a fan of the art of Amanda Palmer. No wonder I'm friends with Omar. Well, again, and I've said this many times, and it's not a defense, like the art that you're going to like, but in the 90s, if you wanted to read a female heroine, you had to read Cheesecake Comics. What was there other than Wonder Woman? Name one. Even Sue Storm had been not the most prominent character in Fantastic Four until she got the 4 boob window. The whole reason that I picked up X-Men as my first comic to read and finally get into is it was the only comic on the stands that had more women as heroes than men on the covers. So I was like, well, I guess that's the only comic I'm interested in. So as time went by, I kind of discovered, like, if you want to read women in comics, they had to be cheesecakey. So it's just so funny because like I get these obnoxious comments, but I'm not qualifying yours as obnoxious, Kurome, or Kurome. But I'm saying over time I've gotten these obnoxious comments like, oh, Krisis just wants to look at boob comics. We have established I do not find illustrated characters attractive. It's just my brain wiring doesn't do that. I don't care. They could have their titties out or not. They could have their butts out or not. They could be guys with their wangs dangling or not. Let's go read Dick Fight Island. Whatever. I just want to read the stuff that I want to read. And because I want to read women in comics, especially from the 90s, which was like formative to me, it's cheesecake. It's cheesecake. Plus, I love horror and comics. And so this is like ticks more, and I love vampire shit. So this ticks all my boxes. I'm sorry if I get a little defensive. I just had somebody be very, very rude and like almost like weirdly discriminating that I must be some like crazy sex freak because I like Vampirella and Lady Death. And so it really gets under my skin a little bit when people are like, oh, you just, which is not to say I have any judgment for people who do want to read them for the titties. Get those titties. But I'm just saying that is not where I am coming from in that. And super job giving a list of all those baddies that were all kind of in the cheesecake category. Vampirella, she, Bale and Catwoman, which was very cheap. I mean, come on. Hold on. This was cheesecake. Even at the time, her breasts are individually socked in that costume. Okay? So, yeah. That's, and Kurmai, walking back and saying they weren't trying to be mean or tease me, just that I double dip a lot with Omar. And that is truly true. Wang's Dangling is my new band name. And Max Appleman saying, let's read Dick Fight Island. Well, we'll come back to that topic some other time, possibly in our private chat, Max. All right, number 57, Dazzler, my girl. And I know you're all saying, but you've read this already. But have I read it all together? Have I read it all in omnibus? No, I haven't read it since actually it started coming out on Masterworks. I read it, I think, originally in Essentials in black and white because that was the only way it was collected. And heaven only knows why Marvel did it, but at least they did. And I had it. So I've read it. I have a guide to Dazzler. I've literally had my thumbs through every issue in this book. But now that I have it in all these gorgeous color formats, I just would like to read it in color. So I guess this is another one. I don't know that I fully read cover to cover every issue. Maybe I've read cover to cover a lot of them. And then in the second one, like I was busy and I didn't, and I'm more like page through because I want to say that I don't know it as well as I know Planetary, but honestly it's from before the note-taking era, so who could say if I know it as well as Planetary or not. Super Drop, I have read some issues of Tarot, what is it, something, Witch of the Black Rose, and that comic is something. It is the haunted vagina comic book. I love the art of Jim Balin. I'm fine with all that art, but I'm just saying, anytime that you have a character's costume where her breasts are like individual, find me somebody in the real world who's wearing some kind of athletic gear that's meant to support them as they're doing things like gymnastics and dropping out of windows and climbing things, where instead of having the boobs kind of like supported and protective, they have each of the breasts in their own individual breast pocket. That's not what breast pocket means. Anyway, love it equally. Okay, let's continue. I know. What is wrong with me? Look, here's what I'll say in my defense. Named Crisis after this book. I've never read all 12 issues of Crisis Infinite Earths, and I don't want to hear it, okay? Because it's not good. It's not. If you have no grounding in pre-Crisis DC, which I don't, and nobody could, because there was no pre-Crisis DC available to anybody. Now, I know that hasn't stopped thousands of people liking this book. I have reread that first issue, probably the first issue of this, I've reread more times than I've reread Hellboy, and I bounce off of it every time. But I haven't tried that for at least 4 or 5 years now, and I now know so much more about DC. I know so much more about pre-Crisis DC. I understand Earth 1 and Earth 2, which I never did previously. And I don't think this makes any sense if you have no grounding in Earth 1 and Earth 2. Now that I've done the research for my JSA guide and things like that, I just think I'm going to get it more. And I understand more about the source wall and all the all the structure of the DC universe. I just never found it accessible before. And so I was named Crisis about a book that I have never read cover to cover. So sue me. That's where the conversation about that one is going to end. Okay, next. Here's another one where I've read every single issue and I'm dying to read them again. I fell in love with Jonathan Hickman, not from Fantastic Four, not from Secret Warriors. I fell in love with Jonathan Hickman from his original run of Image miniseries, only one of which is in a deluxe format, which is this one, Nightly News. And this is when he used to illustrate his own stuff. Nightly News, by the way, such an interesting thing to read right now. It's very much in the keeping of like movies like Network. But he did Nightly News. There's Pax Romana. There's Red Mass for Mars. There's Transhuman. And I want to say there's one more. And they vary in quality. I mean, Hickman's learning how he wants to be a storyteller and what the limits of his abilities as an illustrator are. they're all incredibly interesting. I remember loving some other than others, but again, if I was reading this even before I was reading his Fantastic Four, that means I probably read these all in a binge in like 2011, one after another, just like 5 nights in a row. So I just have but I've reread Nightly News, and I just want to go back and reread them all. I have them all. I hugely appreciate them all. It's why, even though I sometimes get on him a little bit, that Hickman is still kind of on my good list to this day, because these things were just Red Wing was the other one. Thank you, Dr. Zero. And Manhattan Projects, that I would not include in this miniseries accounting. I've read all of Manhattan Projects, some of which after 2017. So I do have some notes on Manhattan Project, another book I've bought as gifts for people many, many times over. 54 is kind of an unusual one because it straddles that pre-New Zealand, post-New Zealand line for me, I think, if I have my dates right, which is Kim and Kim, which was another one of the early Black Mask comics. It's written by Magdalene Visaggio, and it's just about these two kind of intergalactic bounty hunter ladies who are very gay and are up to hijinks in space. And that's just one of those tropes that gets me. I love lesbian bounty people in space. I have somewhere in the shelves here, I don't know if I could get it out quickly enough, I have this amazing indie comic book that you've heard me talk about many times before called Heartbreak Quadrant that I really, really love, that is a similar vibe. And I just remember laughing out loud to this, and I find a lot of things funny, but I'm not a big laugh out loud person, and it just made me really laugh. So I have it all in paperback, I think, but I only ever read the first series, so I just want to sit down and finish it, and it's pretty short, so it's relatively high on the list. Y'all, we're only halfway, we gotta fly. Okay. This is how I sometimes buy things, and I don't even realize what I have. So I bought this because, hold on. Ooh. I bought this because it's David Bowie, because The Man Who Fell to Earth is a David Bowie movie that kind of has to do a little bit with the theme of Ziggy Stardust, but really is its own thing. So I saw that there was a comic book adaptation, and I just bought it. I bought it out of pure reflex. I see some David Bowie, and I buy. Here's what I literally, and I swear this is true, this is from 2022. Here's what I literally did not realize until 4:20 this morning. I wasn't blazing up, it just happened to be 4:20. That as I was putting the images on this presentation, look at the names at the bottom of this cover. Dan Waters, who I love, who wrote Lucifer, who's writing the absolutely incredible Batman Dark Patterns, and somebody who I thought I had never read any comics by before this year, Dev Pramanik, who is crushing it on Moon Knight right now, and I've been talking about how I cannot wait to see him draw more comic books. Well, here I have a whole graphic novel already on my shelf by him. What am I doing with my life? I didn't even know. I had no idea. So actually, this would probably be higher on the list if I had re-algorithmed after 4:20, but I need to go to sleep at that point because now I am really excited to read this. To the point that actually, I listened to Ziggy Stardust while I got ready today instead of listening to Chapel Roan. So that one might be vaulting even farther up the list. Super job saying Dan Waters represents. Andrew O said read it and gave it away. Didn't capture the movie. Very good. Interesting. Ryan finally read the first 3 issues of Dark Patterns yesterday, and our good friend One Wheelchair X is here. Can't stay tonight. Wanted to pop in and say hi. Hope we're doing well, and definitely will be watching it on the replay. We are approaching the 50% mark. Let's keep going. This is one that is your fault. I don't know what stream it was on. I think it was an Evergreen stream, but I don't recall. But I just, again, I'm not a big Alan Moore person, so this just had never resonated with me. It was just not on my list at all. And somebody brought it to one of those streams. I guess it had to have been Indie Superheroes, which was like a whole year ago, because I can't imagine what other stream. It's not like we had an Alan Moore stream, and I don't think we had like a compendium stream. And I want to say it was Lars who was pitching it, and I just became obsessed. Like, the more and more he pitched it, I was like, what? And then I really loved Gene Ha. He had his own book. I forget what it's called that I really liked, but then I also was reminded how much I loved him when I read Wonder Woman Historia. So it's kind of just like this perfect storm of... And it's an Alan Moore book that's very contained. There's one compendium, although I want to say I remember the binding's not very good. But anyway, it's in my next IST order, so I'm finally going to have it. It's a one and done. It's easy to read. And it kind of, again, fits into that Astro City minor threats vibe that I like, where it's imagining a world where multiple people can play in storytelling in the world that kind of has like a superpower thing going on, which is my absolutely favorite thing. Sean from Comic Pal saying that he interviewed Dan Waters. He was great. That is so cool. We love to know when people who are making good art are also good people. And Jarna Harnapal is saying, I mean, it's Shin Ha, so it's going to be a good time. Top 10 is not in the top 10. Disappointed. Y'all, I literally might offer a reward to people who can guess anything in the top 10. But let's just get to the top 50 first. This is 7 Against Chaos. So I have had this on my shelf for eternity, and I've never opened it. I don't even know why I bought it. I bought it because I thought the cover looked cool, and I saw Harlan Ellison's name. Have I ever read a Harlan Ellison novel? No. But I was like, ooh, it's cool that he's doing a comic book. And I just remember being really struck by the art. And do you know who this artist is? It's Paul Chadwick, who's the artist from Concrete. So this is actually my introduction to Paul Chadwick, I think, just seeing this cover. And something about his art style is just very appealing to me. Plus, there's so much information encoded in this cover. There's this kind of like magnetic train, but it's crashing. It's falling out of its tube. There's a giant statue that looks like some kind of like Greek or Roman statue that's falling down. So it looks like it's about kind of the dissolution of a society or something, but it's a one-shot graphic novel. It's not even that long. It's like 128 pages. And I've had it on my shelf forever. And it's one of those things I'm always like, I should read that. I should read that. I should read that, because there's no list. And because I'm a goldfish, I never remembered to read it. And so now it's on the list. And now maybe finally I might read it sometime in the next 4 years. Okay, folks, we're done one half of the list and we need to keep moving. Number 50. And did I remember to pull this out? Yes. I think it's actually, doesn't it usually live in this room? Yeah, hold on. I got it. We're good. This is possibly surprised to Cedric and Ellen if they're still on, although I know it's quite late for them. This is Castle in the Stars. Now, I was already familiar with Alex Alice, who is the creator, writer, and illustrator of these. And they're originally, I believe, issued in French BD, but then these all came out in English. I think for a while I was like waiting for them to come out, because they were coming out very slowly. I think the fourth one, oh, that's 3. Hold on. I think the fourth one is the last one, and I think I wasn't sure about that for a really long time. So I think that's why, I mean, I don't want to spoil, but I just want to see if it says like the end. It says to be continued. So one of my French people, what's up, Frenchies? What is there more? Is there a volume 5? Well, now I feel like it's going to go lower on the list, because if it's to be continued, or did he just say that and there's no volume 5? I don't know. So anyway, I've wanted to read it for a long time. I clearly have all of it. I remember I started reading it because Omnidog likes it, and I started paging through it, and then I just never sat down and read it. So I'm very, very excited to finally read it. It seems like it's got like a really fun vibe where it's like BD, but it's also kind of got like a little bit of like an anime adventure, like a Miyazaki sort of vibe to it too. So I'm really, really excited to finally sit down for it. Richard Bradley, I understand, man. This was always going to be a long one. I love that you've been here as long as you've been, and I'm sure I will catch you on the replay. Cedric and Ellen, is there a volume 5? I mean, I can find out on Google, but I just was wondering if you knew that if there was a volume 5. All right, we're into the top half. Now let's keep going. Okay. This is interesting because even seeing it on my list, I don't know quite what it means. Bronze Age Wonder Woman technically starts during the Diana Prince Omnibus, but I have that separately on the list. It's right down there. I don't have to take it out. But so really, if you're starting after the Diana Prince Omnibus, I think you're starting with issue 205, which is already into the 70s. And technically, this runs much later than the Bronze Age. This issue that I'm showing you, issue 302, is from 1983, I want to say. So there's always this weird thing in DC where if we're talking about the Bronze Age, are we really talking about the pre-crisis 80s? Technically, that's still the Bronze Age, but at DC, it kind of feels like a separate thing. So much of this was never, ever collected in color before. And in that haul around the world last week, you saw me get this, The Legend of Wonder Woman. Now, even though it has Trina Robbins' Legend of Wonder Woman on the cover, and it is the title of this as well, this actually starts collecting from 4 issues after that, Wonder Woman 306. And it is the first, and another cover that I really, really love. And it is the first time that this material has ever been collected in color. Now, I have every issue of Wonder Woman from Wonder Woman 220 in the Bronze Age all the way to Wonder Woman 612 or 614, whatever it was, right before New 52. And I have never read them all because I was going to put them in binding and then sit down and do the podcast. And I was going to read them for the podcast. Now, again, it's starting to feel like that ship is going to sail at some future point. What am I waiting for? Life is going on. Wonder Woman is my favorite character. I should sit down and read it. But my question for this is like, well, does this really mean I'm going to start reading from 205? Or should I actually split it up and like read from 300 to 329 because it's a smaller piece and then go back to 205? I don't know. But it is in my top 50. And anytime I've read any Bronze Age Wonder Woman, I've loved it. I actually think Bronze Age Wonder Woman is really, really, really good. So much better than it's given credit for. And I think that is actually one of the best finest. I have read some of the issues in there. But again, this is one, again, I guess because I have it in singles. When you have stuff in singles, maybe those of you collect in singles still understand this. You don't necessarily sit down and binge it the way you do on digital or the way you do in omnibus. Sometimes you're just like putting stuff in your box and you pick up one that has a cool cover and you just read it. So a lot of the things that I have in singles are things that I've read kind of like random issues, random stuff in. Hayden, I don't know, man. I even put up the thumbnail like 3 or 4 hours early today in the hopes that everybody would get the notifications. No, Creme, my daughter loves Wonder Woman. She's read more Wonder Woman now, I think, than me because she's into the 4th volume of Golden Age Wonder Woman and I am still in the 1st volume. Number 48, iZombie. This is by Chris Robertson and Michael Arad, of course, with Laura Alred on colors. This was a TV series briefly, and when it was a TV series, I was like, ooh, I'm going to pick up all those trades. And I remember for a long time, I had both the trades and the omnibus in my shopping cart, and then I finally just pulled the trigger on the trades. And I've definitely read at least the whole first trade of this, maybe even the first 2 trades. It's just a really charming story. This young woman dies, and now she's back, but she's a zombie, but it also kind of gives her some powers to investigate a little bit about how people die, and she doesn't fully know how she died, if I want to say correctly. And honestly, anything that's Michael Arad that's just not by an author that totally bores me, I'm probably going to have a good time reading. And I was having a very good time reading this. So this is one that is from before my 2017 Rubicon. And I just need to dig out the trade paperbacks from wherever they are in the stacks and start reading it from the start. James Abel with a pretty ringing endorsement with how many comics he reads. iZombie is one of my favorite omnibus. iZombie is fun. Sad it was canceled. Oh, you mean the show? Because I'm like, the book kind of ran its course, right? Andrew O thought iZombie was terrific. Isn't the star of the show Kiwi? I don't know, actually. I am not aware of that. But the next one is number 47, Backstagers. This is from the era of Boombox, where they were putting out so much cool young reader stuff. This Boombox, of course, is the sub-label of Boom Comics, where Lumberjanes came out. And this is written by James Tynion. So before Tynion did Wind as a YA book, he doesn't have a lot of YA. He did this. And it's just kind of like slipped through my knowledge or slipped through my notice. I remember it was like on my pull list. And I was going to read it, and I don't know if I was waiting to get it physically or if I wanted to read it with the kid, but I've read just about everything by Tynion at this point, except for I haven't read all of The Woods, but I think I own it all in paperback. I think I just fell off at some point, but I've never read this. So it's kind of like a home run. It's pretty short. It's by an author I'm obsessed with. It's YA, so I love it. I can give it to the kid. So absolutely something to read. And again, you're going to start seeing much shorter runs now they're in the top 50 because the algorithm favored them, but not this one. This is actually one of the longest runs in the top 100. It is Green Arrow by Mike Grell. And I have read a significant portion of the beginning of this, but I've never read all of it. And you've heard me say many times on many channels, and I will continue saying it, that of all of the DC finest that are out at this point, I think something like 35, I don't know, I guess we could count. This is the best one. It is the best one. Longbow Hunters into the first arc of Mike Grell doing the ongoing Green Arrow book is the best content that has been collected in DC Finest. I already know I love that first chunk. I probably read like about this much of this Finest before the Finest ever came out. And I seriously consider getting the omnibuses, but I really don't collect DC omnibus other than Wonder Woman. And so it's just time. It's time for me to just sit down and read it. I know that I love it. I know that Grell is amazing. I know that I love this version of Green Arrow. Why have I not read it? Because I'm always catching up on a pull list. Well, it is time for me to sit down and just enjoy it front to back. Green Arrow by Grell is so damn good, says Jamie C. 47. Number 45, again, you're going to roll your eyes, but it's Daredevil by Frank Miller. And again, This is because it's from before the 2017 Rubicon. I have this all in complete collection. I have read this run before, but I've read it like in pieces with other things in between. I was probably getting new books from Marvel Now as I was trying to read this, so I never just sat down and like read it sequentially. Plus those complete collections skipped that one non-Miller issue. Plus I'd probably not really read much other Daredevil at that point. So to me, and I think it was kind of lost on me. Even though I was certainly a very experienced comic reader, I would like to read it now with my modern knowledge, with taking notes, with like really paying more attention to the sequential storytelling in it. And it's an all-time classic, which is why it's so high. It's not really high on my list to reread. It's like, do I really want to spend my time rereading a bunch of stuff I've already read? Not necessarily, but I do feel like I want to give it its due in a time that I can really devote focus to it. And so that is why it's this high on the list, because it is significant and I haven't reread it in this period. So it is time for me to reread it. Number 44 is American Born Chinese by Jean Luen Yang. Now, what's really interesting is I had this out from the library for a long time back in the States when Kid Krisis was born, because Kid Krisis is part Chinese and family members are American Born Chinese. So I thought this would really resonate, but I just thought it was more of a kiddie comic than it was. I didn't realize it was more of like a teenager comic. And so I very quickly was like, oh, this isn't a comic to like sit down and read with 3-year-old like Lumberjanes. I just thought it was going to be much more about a kid. And I mean, he is a kid, but some of the themes are mature and some of the language is not language I would read to a 3-year-old necessarily. But now that she's the age of this character, I just feel like we should both read it. And it's a modern classic. Everybody acknowledges it as a classic. It is just time for me to finally sit down and read it. William Lee saying, yes, 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 American Born Chinese is so good. I wish this existed when I was young. It would have made me feel better about myself. Number 43 is TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at IDW 1 through 50. So here's the thing. I started reading this, I think it must have been 2019, because the last time we had family in New Zealand right before this year. And I remember they went camping and I do not camp. And so I was like, ooh, I have a whole day to like really, really dig into a run. So I remember I started reading the first like 6 or 7 issues of this. And then I was like, oh, the new issues look really cool. What if I just read one of the new ones to see what's happening right now? And then I started at 87 or 88 and I became totally addicted and I binged the whole rest of the day just reading like a bunch of newer issues. So I kind of preempted my own read of these original issues. I already know I love this run. I love what Eastman and Waltz do with this. And I want to read to issue 50 because 50 is a pretty good stop point. It's one of the breaks in the existing collections. And then I have a nice, tidy little piece of it to read afterwards, which would just be 51 to 87. Although there are a lot of supporting series and stuff to read as well. But I already know that this is good. I already know that I love it. I've already read some of it. It's just a matter of, again, make the time. Sit down. Do the thing. Logan Wayne, this is on my list. Your Honor Paul's Cottagecore Turtles. Yeah, that's Turtles after 100 is when it becomes Cottagecore Turtles. Okay. Number 42 is the newer run of XO-Manowar from 2012. It was the launch book of Valiant's 2012 regional launch. Now, this is actually, I can't believe I haven't talked about this yet. I dropped Marvel at the beginning of 2016 because I had been reading all of the Marvel Now books, and then Secret Wars happened, and they were like, well, this might be the end of Marvel. Of course, that was a lie. So it was a great time to jump off. I just feel like when people market to you sensationally, believe the sensationalism. So they were like, the Marvel universe might end. And I said, great, I have other shit to do. And so I stopped reading Marvel. I got the end of all of my Marvel trades in 2015. And when all new or different Marvel started coming out, I just didn't order them, which was a good thing because you can't eternally buy everything. And that's why people are always like, what do you mean you don't buy physical things mostly that come after 2012? And it's just because to buy things from 2012 and forward is the universe is infinite. I could keep buying things forever. At least if I'm saying I'm buying things that were from 2012 and prior in terms of what they collect, I know that there's a finite stopping point to my obsession. So that's why I usually do not let anything except for really good indie comics into the house if it was published after 2015 or 2016. But what happened was I really didn't read many comics at all in 2016. And then I came back in 2017 and it was the beginning of the year and I was like, what should I start with? So I started with DC Rebirth and I spent most of the year catching up in the DC Rebirth, not touching Marvel at all. And then when we first got to New Zealand, it was so hard to adjust to the time change. I was like, I need some stuff to binge just so I can like go to sleep at night and like have a thing to read. What's something nice and long I can binge? And so I started reading all of the Valiant stuff. Now I had a lot of it already because I started buying it in paperback, but I think I made the mistake of reading Harbinger first, and Harbinger unfortunately hinges very strongly on the main character committing a sexual assault. So you know how I am about sexual assault in comic books written by men when the sexual assault is against women. So I pretty much just was like, well, I'm gonna just dip all these books in root beer. Fuck these Valiant books. But then I started in 2017 reading from the beginning of XO-Manowar, and I discovered actually the whole Valiant universe was fucking incredible. It's so good. Like if you are looking for something to just sit down and binge like a solid 30 issues where the editorial is great, the writing is great, the art is great, the plotting is great, the interplay between the stuff is great, the continuity is great. Valiant from 2012 to like 2019 has my full ringing endorsement, except for that one theme in Harbinger. I think almost all of the books are good, almost all of the books look great, and all of the events really, really slap. Actually, I remember the other reason I stopped buying the trades, because when Book of Death came out, which is one of the big events, they had a special retailer only series that was never going to be collected. And I was like, well, fuck that noise. I'm not going to keep buying these books where one of the books is about sexual assault and the other book is never going to be collected. So I'm stubborn. What are you going to do? But this, I've read easily the first 20 issues of this, which is not the whole run, and it's not over 50%, even though I started after 2017. And I know that I love it. I've actually read the series that comes after this. I forget what year it's from, but I love that series from front to back. So this is just about like completing a gap in my modern reading. Yarna Paul is saying these new Valiant Hero Origins books of the 2012 era look so enticing to me. I have been eyeing them, but I'm just like, I actually have so much of a digital at this point from that reading project that I'm like, and I have a lot of the original trades. So I'm like, I don't need to buy them a third time. I'm just happy to have them digital. That is fine. Edward Billiot saying, what do you mean I can't buy everything? Now, number 41, Superman Post-Crisis by John Byrne. I have started reading this. I am 9 issues in, so I have a while to go. Of course, they were all collected in those series of John Byrne Man of Steel hardcovers that are just standard size. There's 4 of them, and they do leave out a few series that I would read in this period, like World of Krypton, and is the other one the Daily Planet? There's like 3 miniseries that fit into this period that are not in those hardcovers. Of course, hotly debated and probably the most mentioned thing I see on comic book Reddit in terms of collections of comic books is, when are we getting this in omnibus? And they've said the files just were not good enough to go from standard size to oversized. That's the case even in these Valiant hardcovers, that like actually the art inside is standard size because you need higher scale art to upsize the art, just like you do with any picture. But John Byrne isn't my all-time favorite, but I just really have an affinity for finding out what's happening post-crisis. I've read over 50 issues of post-crisis Wonder Woman. We'll talk more about other post-crisis things. So I just want to read this. And honestly, I know I could just start at Triangle, but I want to start from here. I just want to start from here. It's enticing to start from here. It's something I've always wanted to do. And so it is exciting for me. Lance McNair says the John Byrne Superman is on my list as well. Heck, 90s Superman in general. Yeah, I would like to read all of Triangle up to 2000. And that is one that I will be dogmatic about reading in order. Read Man of Steel, but I cannot get into the actual run after. I tried a few times. Can't get more than a few issues. And we'll maybe skip that in-betweener run and just go to Triangle. Because at the point that you have John Byrne as your foundation, you don't have to read like every storyline. Triangle is when it really starts cooking, I think. So yeah. And Logan Wayne, like so many people, I want the omnibus, but I've never read any of it. I love Byrne's art, though. And again, you have to think that this was not super accessible for a long time. Even before there was those standard size hardcovers, there were a series of trades, but they were kind of hard to come by. So this was a combination of, that I'm not much of a DC reader. Before 2011, I started reading DC other than Wonder Woman really with New 52. And then in terms of trying to reach back to pre-New 52 continuity, I really only started doing it when I started DC Guides, and DC Guides weren't until 2017. So like, I really don't have much of a relationship with old DC. I really, really don't. And it's something absolutely to correct. Number 40, here's something I have read every issue of multiple times. It's Miss Marvel 1977. So why is it on the list? Well, for a while, the only way, before the Masterworks existed, the only way to get this was in Essentials. So I had it in Essentials, and I read a lot of it in Essentials because I'd always wanted to read it. Even in the 90s, I wanted to read it, and the back issues just weren't really around in the 90s. So I read it in Essentials. Then, as a splurge, probably before there was any hint that she was going to be in the MCU, but just after she became Captain Marvel in the comic books, I bought myself a complete run of this in singles. So I did read it in singles, which was exciting, and I was going to bind them. I was like, I don't care how expensive they are, I'm going to bind them. Then when I was leaving the States, there were a few things I sold where I was just like, I think this is worth a lot of money right now, and I don't know if I'll be able to sell it in New Zealand. One of those things was the Hickman Fantastic Four omnibuses. The other thing was this complete run of Miss Marvel. Do I regret it? Yeah, I still remember putting it in the box and being like, you still have time to cancel this transaction, and I sent it. But you know what? Comics are just things, and I now have this in Masterworks. I have it in Epic Collection. They're formats. I probably was never going to read those individual comics ever again, other than the thrill of finally seeing it in color when it had never been visible in color to me before. So they served their purpose, and I made good money on selling them, and somebody else got to enjoy them. So now I have it in other color formats. Now here's the thing. When I was doing my X-Men Claremont read with Kid Krisis, I gave her a few issues of this to be like, ooh, let's try them. And I think we read the Mystique issue and the Deathbird issue. And Kid Krisis was a little younger at the time, and she's like, it's fine. I'd rather get back to X-Men. Now I think she likes older media and is fascinated by Silver and Broadshade stuff more, that if we were rereading now, she probably would read this. But what that means is all the times I've read it have been all split apart. Like I read it in Essentials when I first was getting back into comics. Then I read the singles kind of just as I got them. And then I read a few issues with Kid Krisis and I noted them in my spreadsheet, but I never read it from beginning to end because she didn't want to read it with me. So I need to just read the whole thing beginning to end in the taking notes era. Yeah. Lance McNair saying, I read the first epic and really liked it, but struggled with the second one and stopped. But generally, I really like Carol Danvers. Miss Marvel always makes me think of the Michael Golden Avengers annual Super Drop, which was a comic I still have my physical copy of, and is one of my favorite comics of all time. And that is my favorite single comics issue. Yeah, it's definitely very, very high. Cedric and Ellen has the complete series of Miss Marvel. I have to read the Marvel Superheroes, which actually I got again because it had so many cool anthology stories which Marvel had never collected at that time, and I was going to bind them, only for then Squirrel Girl to get really big, which didn't happen until 2015. And so then all of a sudden Marvel Superheroes number 5, I think was their first appearance, got really valuable, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm not going to cut that issue in half now. So now we're into the top 40. Number 39, The Brave and the Bold by Liam Sharp. So this is really unusual in my top 100 in that this is a mini series from 2016 and forward, and I just haven't read it. I missed it. I don't know. I was busy that day. I can't tell you why. I love Liam Sharp. I have loved him ever since he drew Death Head in the 1990s. I love Wonder Woman, of course, and I love when Wonder Woman gets teamed up with Batman. I just think Wonder Woman Batman team-ups are always so great. We have so many Wonder Woman Superman team-ups. We have so many Batman Superman team-ups. Batman Wonder Woman team-ups are really, really special. I know this is probably like a slow, weird fantasy thing, but I just see that cover and I just get so excited to read it. And I don't have it physically. I probably wouldn't get it physically because it's from this like newer era that I don't collect physically, but it's on DC Infinite and it's 6 issues. Why have I not read it? Why have I not read it? I could just read it tonight, but you've heard me say so many times on this that I could just read this tonight. Okay. Next, this one's for you, Cedric and Ellen. When I was in France, I went to a BD store and I told them in halting French what the kind of books I like to read were. I'm sure it was like, j'aime lire des livres comme, like my spoken French is much better now because I've been practicing for a whole other decade. And they then started speaking to me in English, thankfully. And they walked to the shelf and they handed me this. Now, there is an English version of Le Complexe du Chimpanzé, I should say, not like English. That's an accent aigu. But I have it in French. And I remember getting back from France and being like, I'm going to read this comic book, and just getting to like the 4th panel and being like, I don't know enough words in this panel. So I'm always working on my French. I've sat down and read children's books in French. I do Duolingo. I really, it's a language that's been with me. I had 2 of the most amazing French teachers probably in the world when I was in high school, and they really stuck with me. I'm still friends with the one of them who is still with us. And I just would like to be able to read it in French. I know that I think I actually have it in digital and English because I thought, oh, maybe I'll like read it in French and then side by side have the English. No, screw that. I'm going to read it in French and I'm going to understand it. So it's, I maybe somebody in the chat can tell you what it's about. It might be about chimpanzees. I don't know. I just know that the guy in the BD store in Paris, we were in the Montmartre, neighborhood of Paris, told me that I would really like it. And so it's been on my shelf evermore. And I would like to finally read it in French. So, that, ooh, are they too big to fit on it? No, they just barely fit into one of these Expedit shelves. So, I would like to finally get to enjoy that. Okay, let's continue to I did the thing I always do in the stream, which was like talk for hours about the first 3 things. And now I'm like, let's make it snappy. But this was how snappy it was supposed to be all along. This is a book that has been in my book bag to dentist offices, appointments, waiting for Kid Krisis to be picked up from school. It is Squire by Sarah Alfajay and Nadia Shamas. It's about a young girl who becomes a squire. What more do you need to know? It's absolutely gorgeous. It's just a really nice little graphic novel. It's something that really excites me. Born a second-class citizen. Hold on, I need the glasses. Born a second-class citizen, Asa has always dreamt of becoming a knight. It's the highest military honor in the once great Bait Sage Empire, and as a member of the recently colonized Ornu people, it's her only way to full citizenship. Love that as a theme. Now ravaged by famine and mounting tensions between different provinces, Bait Seiji finds itself on the brink of war once again, and Asa can finally enlist in the competitive Squire training program. So it's a YA book. I ultimately really have meant to give it to Kid Krisis, but I just selfishly want to read it myself. I know tons of people have read it and have loved it. It's only this long. Again, I could read this in a night. It is within my power. So why haven't I read it? Because I don't have a list and I'm a goldfish. So that is why Squire is number 37 on my list. Number 36 is something that I've read all the way through, but I read it all the way through in 1995, so I really don't have a lot of recollection of it, which is Wonder Woman by William Messner-Loebs, and of course a lot of it with interior art from Mike Deodato. You've heard me talk about this run 100 times if you watch Near Mint Condition. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. I think it is just as good as the George Perez run. I think these Brian Boland covers are some of the best covers of any comic book in the 1990s. This is incredibly formative to me. The reason I love it so much is because Perez was about Wonder Woman finding her place and her origin and defining her in the DC universe. And then Messner-Loebs kind of just gets to have fun. He gets to like have her fight the Joker, have her go back to Amazon Island, now being a mainstream hero. That's who Wonder Woman was at this point. I have a lot of affection for this run. It has been collected in trade paperback, and I'm sure we're going to revisit it in Finest, but I really think we're going to see it in omnibus in the next 2 years because they are reprinting the Perez omnibuses. There's a volume 2 already solicited. So if they reprint volume 3 and they've already done the John Byrne omnibus, which directly follows this, I really think that we're going to get this in late 2026 or early 2027. So even though I have it in singles, I am holding out to read it in omnibus because the art is so gorgeous. This is where I originally fell in love with Mike Deodato Jr. I'm so excited to finally just sit down and read it in a modern context. Plus, I probably would like to read those last 13 issues of Perez that I still have lingering and then just roll right into this because I do want to read all of Wonder Woman, and that's a small price to pay to get into this run. Grona Paul's asking, where are the GF Johns titles? Why would they be in my top 100? Remember, one of the criteria is my desire to read something, and another one of my criteria is how much fun it should be. There are Jeff Johns. Now I'm confusing his name with your names. It's Jarfa Johns. Sorry, I do not like making fun of people's names. I just am tongue-tied. There are some of his runs in my list. I mean, all of it. Basically, anything DC from Krisis to present is on my list because I do want to read it all at some point. But like, JSA is probably the highest thing, but I also am kind of excited about the new Lanterns compendiums that are restoring all the things that were not really in the bit of that. There's a lot of John stuff that I would read. Certainly none of it gets anything close to my top 100. Why would it? Only good books are in my top 100. Okay, I gotta keep going. Number 35 is Resurrection Man by Abnett and Lanning. If you've watched the pull list, you've heard me talk about this. Abnett and Lanning came back to this creation from the late 90s of theirs in the New 52 and got to write 12 more issues, or maybe it was 13 with the 0 issue of it. And it was, I think, my favorite New 52 book. I remember when I first started reading New 52, and you can see this on Crushing Crisis, I read all the number ones, and then I had a tournament bracket, and I started facing them off against each other. And very quickly I discovered there were whole parts of the bracket where I did not think a single book was good, and so that idea fell apart very quickly because so many of the New 52 books were just so bad. But this was the one that I really stuck with and loved, and really just was so upset when it finally got canceled. And so then when I started getting singles, this had never been collected, the original 1997 series. And so I just got all of it, and I did some research so I could bind it. So I got everything. I have his appearance in Superman or Supergirl. I have the body doubles, one shot or miniseries or whatever. I have it all perfectly organized and bound. And so then now there's this new Ram V series, which I absolutely hate, about Resurrection Man, but you know what? It's Black Label, so I can ignore it. And but I think it's time to finally go back and read this. And actually, I started reading this year. Every time a new issue of that terrible Ram V series would come out, I would read an issue of the classic series and go, "Ooh, that's good comics." And so I think I got like 3 or 4 issues into reading this. I think there's 27 issues of this, and 1 million issue, and some of those other issues. All told, even if I read all the way into New 52, it's less than a 50 issue read, and it's something I've wanted to read in total really bad forever. And actually, I having read the first 3 issues, I absolutely love them. So like, yeah, there's no reason not to read this. That's why it's so high in the list. I just need to make the time. Chromai saying, I love New 52 Resurrection Man. Next is one of those books that kind of got cut off by my move to New Zealand, which is The Fade Out by Brubaker and Phillips. This is a Brubaker and Phillips book that is not part of Criminal. I love old Hollywoody stuff when it like crosses over with journalism, like when there's a crime and there's a journalist on the scene, or if it's like about news breaking in the newspaper, like that's just my thing that I love, because my degree's in journalism. I love stories of classic journalism. And so like something that's about like a murder mystery and a screenwriter and old Hollywood, like something about that to me is just so compelling. And I read the first trade of this and absolutely loved it. And then I just fell off and I had to pack things, and they were on my shelf in the old office, but I wasn't really reading a lot of indie at that point. So I just need to sit down and read it. I just need to sit down and read it because I know I will already love it. My very good friend Tiger Eyes, whose its fault is that many of these books are on the list because he let us do a DC poll in his name, and I got to know things like Hawkworld that are on this. He finds it fascinating. A lot of these books are a sign of their times. Top 10 is the only Alan Moore work I love. Yes, it was Lars during the DC poll. And Grell's Green Arrow is amazing. Yeah, for me, Tiger Eyes, a lot of this is about excavating back to reading the book that either defined that period of time that I just missed because it wasn't accessible to me previously, or going back to a period of time and like uncovering something that I had never heard of before. And I was like, wait, that came out when? Concrete was from 1986. Why does nobody talk about Concrete? So that's like, really feels like this list is like 3 things. It's like things that are totally in my wheelhouse, things that are of their time that I'd always meant to read, and then things that are of their time that I've just finally kind of like uncovered. Ryan Wilson saying Fade Out was solid. It felt like an old noir film set in Hollywood. Yes. I am a musician. My guitars are just off screen. I've not been playing a lot of music this year, but that's because it's been a tremendous lot of comic reading, and then also a tremendous lot of triathlon training recently. But I do, it's in the master plan to get back to the music. And actually, triathlon training is helping with the music because my breath control is getting way better. Andrew O read it last month. It was fine. Yorna Pauls wants to read Fade Out really bad. Seeing Sean Phillips is face inking is sometimes too much for me. Oh, I love the specificity of that critique. And Ryan Wilson read the new Brubaker last night, The Knives. All right, let's continue. This means we're 2/3 of the way through. I think we're slightly accelerating. If you watch the Near Mint Condition Evergreen streams, you know that this is on my list from the absolute Evergreen, because I believe this was one of Jess's picks, and I'd never heard of it. Whenever I see Alex Ross, I'm like, oh, it's like some other Kingdom Come, whatever. And then as Jess was like talking about it, and I actually had to like look for covers and stuff for it so I could make the presentation, I just got like more and more fascinated with it. And it's actually not Alex Ross doing all the interiors. It's Jim Kruger and Doug Braithwaite doing the interiors. And it's just like transfixing. It's one of, I am an art person, I guess. Really, we all know I'm a colors person. And if the colors aren't good, I'm like out of there. But the more and more pages I saw from it, I was like, I just need to sit down and read this. And it's like 12 issues. So I don't, this is one that I don't have physically. I don't think I would buy it physically. I would just read it on DC Unlimited. I have no idea if it's in continuity at all. All I know is it looks really friggin' cool. Okay. No, everybody should keep commenting. Look, Reaper, I could have done this as a pre-record, but I was like, what's the fun in that? I don't get to see what you all think. And I wanted to know, like, which of these books have you read? Which of them are you surprised? Which are you are totally embarrassed for me that I have not read yet? So absolutely keep reading. Well, Super Job, you know, I don't like alternate future, alternate reality. It's just not my bag. So like when I see Alex Ross, usually I'm like, oh, well, Alex Ross never does like ongoing comics. So there's going to be some alternate nonsense. So I'm like probably not going to read it unless it's like Marvels generally. So, okay. Number 32, Wildcats by Alan Moore. So we all know that I love Wildcats. We all know that I talk about Wildcats all the time. Fun fact, I have read this run of Wildcats. Coincidentally, it just happens to be in this compendium, but I've read this in singles 5 times, 7 times, 12 times. It's one of the things I just used to read all the time in the 90s. And then it's something that I pulled out again when I got my comics back out of storage in the 2000s. And then I read it again and reviewed every issue one by one on my blog in 2016 when I launched my Patreon. But I've never been that far into this. I was collecting at the time maybe 1 or 2 issues past here. I have a very specific memory of some scenes in one of these early issues, but I've just never read the whole Alan Moore run. It's not that long. It's like 15 issues, not even. And then there's a run that comes after Alan Moore that wraps up the end of the series, and then we get to Wildcats 2.0 and 3.0. Again, I think you're seeing a theme of a lot of Alan Moore on here because I just feel like I'm undereducated in Alan Moore. I feel like I've read Watchmen. I've read, I don't know, I've read something other than Watchmen. It's not coming to mind at the time. But this is Alan Moore writing like my favorite property. And I even remember it being good. And people talk about how cool what he did with Wildcats was and how he actually did dig into the core concept of Wildcats, of the Daemonites versus the Cherubim, which is like one of my favorite things about Wildcats. And so like and I have it. So like the only reason not to read it would be, am I waiting for them to put out another compendium, which I am and I will buy, but I really think I should just read it. Justice is enjoyable, says Edwin Billiot, and not in continuity. Lance says Justice is on my list too. However, Ryan points out it reads like an in-continuity story. Carmine had no idea that Alan Moore did Wildcats. Ryan Wilson never got into Wildcats or any of those Wild Street Image action comics from the 90s. Logan Wayne asking me, how did I feel about ultra-realistic art like Alex Ross? I love it. I mean, I've said many times that I got back into X-Men at the period that Adi Granov was doing all of the covers of X-Men, and I thought the interiors were going to look like that. Like, I just thought, and I saw Adi Granov doing Iron Man. I think I'd seen some interiors from Salvador Larroca doing Iron Man with Fraction. So, like, I just thought that's what comic books looked like. I was like, yeah, we finally got there. So, I mean, I like many styles of interior art, but I do really like hyper-rendered interior art. Yes, I've read Miracle Man was on my list at the beginning, Cormai, where I'm over 50% of the way through. So I have read Miracle Man. That is another Alan Moore that I have read. Alan Moore was most of the original Image creators' answer to critics that said their stories sucked. That's true. He wrote Vindicator for Spawn, which I have right here. And which I'm going to drop on the floor and ruin. Luckily, my plant protein bag caught it. He wrote Violator for Todd McFarlane. He wrote that run of Wildcats. He wrote Supreme for Rob Liefeld. So he was all over the early, because it was creator owned. And at the time, it seemed like it was going to be a friendly place for him. Planet 628 saying I was obsessed with the first 4 issues of Wildcats. I would take them on road trips, which I never did with singles. Same. As we've established on this and other shows, I had a shopping basket from Rite Aid that I do not know how I had acquired, but I just had it. Like my father's house, because my parents were divorced for the weekend, or I remember going down the shore, like down the shore, you say, if you're in Philadelphia, to the Jersey Shore for like a week. I would have this Rite Aid basket of the 40 comic books, because that's how many could fit that I would read that week. And the 2 most frequent flyers in there to be stacked up and 40 comic books would be all of Age of Apocalypse or all of Wildcats that I had at that time. Okay. Now we're almost into the top 30. Number 31, surprise! It's another Wildcats, and I've read this, as I just said, many, many times, so I don't have to go on and on about it. We are talking about exactly the contents of this. We're literally talking about this. The last time I read it was 2016, and it's just one of my favorite runs of all time, and I read it literally just months before my note-taking era. So those are the comics. I think what happened is I had not read many comics in 2016 because at the beginning of the year, work was super, super busy. We were going through potentially an acquisition or going public. It wound up getting acquired. Then I became a stay-at-home parent. That was absolutely exhausting. And I was trying to update CK a lot just do something semi-professional. Then at the end of the year, I read a whole ton of Wildstorm. And then at the beginning of 2017, I started taking notes. So I just want to go back and reread all this, which I have in singles, but I might just read it in compendium this time through to just go through and take notes. Although what's funny is I kind of have already taken notes because as I said, I reviewed it all on Crushing Crisis. So you can see my reviews. It's one of the few times that all of my extensive notes on a comic actually are published somewhere. I could go and read all of them. But yeah, I love this. I aim to always read it every 7 or 8 years. I always would like to. I think Travis Charest does like movie, what is it called? Not world building, key art, or like concept art. I think he does something like that. Wildcats, here's the thing. Wildcats never fully realizes its potential in this compendium, and I think Alan Moore actually, it sounds like, does a lot with the potential, but the ideas are really, really cool, and it's a really fertile ground, and it's Jim Lee is just so much more powerful here than he was even on X-Men. And so that, to me, is why I really like Wildcats. It's the potential. I don't know if any of the early Image comics ever truly met their sheer potential. I don't know if any of them all the way delivered, other than Spawn. But Wildcats is the one whose potential maybe excites me the most. Maybe I also meant storyboarding. I also could be making that up. Okay, number 30 is Punisher by Greg Rucka. Now, have I read any of this? Yes, because it crossed over with Daredevil. This occupied a weird spot where in 2010 and 2011, I was reading everything X-Men and catching up on X-Men. And then by the time I got to 2012, I had also started catching up on Daredevil and on Spider-Man and on Avengers because of AVX. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to buy every single Marvel comic in Marvel Now. So then I have read every comic from Marvel Now, every single issue. And because I was getting them in trade paperback. But as I was doing that, I was like, oh shit, some of these things are going out of print. I better start buying them quickly now before they become unavailable, because I was starting to like queue into that world. So I caught up with buying all Punisher, and Rucka was the Punisher run I had like just missed prior to Marvel Now. So I knew that I liked Rucka, and at the time I already knew that I was obsessed with Marco Cacchetto, and now he's one of my all-time faves because he could draw this hair. But I just never sat and read it cover to cover. It's always at the top of the omnibus poll. I know it's really good from the few issues of it I have read. I just need to sit down and read the whole thing. And Logan Wayne, like many of the other people, are waiting for an omnibus for this. We have Super Job's special request to show out. This is a rare compendium that has a centerfold. I don't know if I can find it. I'm trying to just run my my thumb across the. I always get so nervous because it's so hard to hold it open, and I'm afraid I'm gonna drop it and then it's just all gonna rip because it's so fragile. But it was like this in the original comic. And I think there's another page in here like this too. But Jim Lee, man. I don't think Silvestri did a fold out like that. I think only Lee did. And that was part of the, oh gosh, the paper is quite fragile. The original paper I feel like was nicer than the paper on the compendiums. That was part of the original, what was that crossover called? Killer Instinct. And they are fold out in the Absolute as well. So those are friggin' huge. Yes. Super Chop just wanted to see me struggle to do it. No, I don't think we've announced Punisher Rucka yet. They're really shy about announcing Punisher stuff. Okay, on to the top 30. Number 29. Oh, here's another one I have here. The Amazing Screw-On Head and Other Curious Objects, which is a Mike Mignola book. And guess what? This is still in the wrapper, and we're going to unwrap it live. So I do really like Mike Mignola and Mike Mignola's storytelling, even if I can't super get into Hellboy. And what's really funny is that I had some non-comic book readers in my life who actually recommended me this, like being like, oh, do you know who Mike Mignola is? I'm like, yeah, from Hellboy, thinking they were going to tell me to read Hellboy. But no, they told me to read this. And so I'm just so intrigued to finally read it. This is really nice. It's kind of got like the fuzzy, velvety bind of the library editions, but then it's bound across a wrapped cover. So it's really, really cool. This is the 20th anniversary edition. Victorian flying machines, a mechanical head, tomb robberies, ghosts, witches, puppets, aliens, and giant vegetables. A dizzy parade of curiosities between these covers, including the Eisner Award-winning stories, The Amazing Screw-On Head, and The Magician and the Snake. So this is like a nice digestible. It's not part of the Hellboy universe. But it is a Mike Mignola book that I could just sit and just read, right? And it's so nice. It's so pleasant. I'm so happy that I bought it physically. So that is a thing. that I just is on my list. And it's like a lot of these stuff in the bookshelves, I look at them and they're one-offs. And I'm like, why am I more likely to read things when they're in a big run? Like, why wouldn't I be more likely to just read these one-off things? Amazing Screwhead is on my to-read list. Lance McNair, Milestone is on my to-read list, but I have it all as one chunk. I haven't thought of how to break it up. And because it's so long, the algorithm is pushing it down. Quincognito is here. Hello, friend. Amazing Screwhead is pretty charming. And I enjoyed the stuff from the expanded version. Oh, well, excellent, excellent, excellent. I did not know that I could startle a goldfish, but I sincerely apologize to the goldfish, and I will try to keep my excitement contained. Number 28 is Gotham City Sirens, which is where Harley Quinn heads and Catwoman head after their individual series are over, just before New 52. I started reading this for some Evergreen show. I forget what. Maybe it was like Evergreen Gotham, Evergreen Omnibuses. I don't even remember, honestly. And of course, I really liked it. I mean, it goes through a whole number of different authors, so people like refer to it as if it's Paul Dini, but Paul Dini didn't do all of it. But I just love these characters. Harley, I could take her leave, but I really love Catwoman, and I've always loved Poison Ivy ever since the 90s. Anytime she was on a cover of a Batman book, I always would buy it. So I'm not 50% in. I'm just a couple of issues in. I just need to sit down and read it. It's just got to happen. I got to make time, and it's very high on my list because it's not a very long run. It's all characters I like, and I already started it, and I already know that I like it. But again, I did not fuck with DC before New 52. So any kind of DC for me is like things that I go back and retrospectively read after having started reading New 52. And I just haven't made a lot of time for that. So like Morrison, Batman, Perez, Wonder Woman, I just haven't read a lot of DC. That's just, even though I'm knowledgeable about the stuff from a bibliographical, oh boy, we've been online for a while. Let's go to number 27, The Authority. Now, this was after I'd already stopped reading comic books that Warren Ellis transformed Stormwatch into The Authority. And so when I was collecting all of my Wildstorm stuff before moving to New Zealand, yes, I did buy every single issue, or a lot of this is actually collected in trade because it was popular enough, every single trade of The Authority. But I'd been waiting and waiting and waiting to get my Wildstorm reading all the way there. And so I thought I was going to read Stormwatch, and then I was going to read Ellis Stormwatch, and then I was going to read The Authority. I have acknowledged that I don't need to do all that. I could just read The Authority. It could happen, especially now that it's an omnibus, but I have it in trade. I think I skipped getting it in singles because the singles are kind of expensive, but I have it all completely in trade. So why would I not just read it? Why would I not just read it? And I've read some of it, and I've paged through it, and I know the impact it has in the industry, but I need to just sit down and it's 29 issues. Why haven't I not read it? Yeah. A huge gap. But that's the theme of a lot of this because so much of my reading and my collecting and paging through is oriented to making guides that so often I just don't sit. I like browse comic books. I only commit to read comic books as they're coming out, but that's like a fire hose that I'm always trying to drink. And it's like, I got to go back and like read this stuff. Speaking of which, this is actually, I can grab this. I might knock some things over, but it's just off camera. Oh, okay. I love Tori Amos. I always will love Tori Amos. She's super, super influential on me as a musician and as a person. And this is Tori Amos' Little Earthquakes, the graphic album. So about 10 years ago, they did a graphic album called Comic Book Tattoo that had all comic writers and artists writing short stories that went with a variety of Tori Amos songs. Jonathan Hickman did one of them. So then this it smells so good. This just a couple of years ago came out, and this is a similar theme that has stories that go through all of the songs on her iconic debut solo album. Here is David Mack, I believe. I have to say, based on the look of it, it's probably David Mack illustrating one of them. Now, very sadly, one of Tori Amos's best friends for decades was Neil Gaiman. And Neil Gaiman wrote the intro to this, as he often does with any kind of literary thing that has Tori Amos. And of course, Tori Amos founded RAINN, the Rape, Abuse, and Incest something network. It has two ends to support survivors of all of those things. And so she has very strong opinions on people who would take advantage of women or of anybody, any gender. And so the upshot is probably we're not ever going to see a lot of Tori Amos books that have Neil Gaiman forwards and introductions in them ever be printed again. And that's separate from the whole other Neil Gaiman industrial complex. Because if you've seen any interviews with Tori Amos in the past year, it's like her spirit has truly been broken, I think, by this news. The one interview with her in The Guardian, she just was at a true loss for words. And that's horrible to have somebody you trusted who knows the theme of your work is something, violate your trust in that way. There's not a symposium on Neil Gaiman. It's a symposium on, it's probably not ever going to get reprinted. I do have it. I bought it before all that went down. I love Tori Amos. I could probably sing you Tori Amos's first 4 records from front to back, straight up, and probably play a lot of it on guitar. And I just love the idea. She refers to her songs as her girls. And she says that, she's not truly in charge of the songs. She can want to write them, but she feels like she's capturing them from the ether, and that she's kind of dialing in something. Is it a soul? Is it a person? Is it a spirit? Is it a message from the earth? That's always been the way that she writes. And so I love the idea that each of her songs has such a personality that you literally can listen to one of them and be like, what's the story here? Because Tori's an artist who has a real mythology between her songs, and that some of the songs connect, or some of them make references to each other or to characters from other ones of them. And so I just feel like you really truly could continue to make comic books of every one of her songs. I would love to see one of these for Scarlet's Walk. I think Scarlet's Walk is another album of hers that has amazing character work in each one of the songs. But I just would love to sit down and read this and make the time for it. It's not even that long. And so, obviously, that is why it did so well on the list. Let's put it back here in a secure way so it does not tumble onto the ground. Tori. Okay. Great interview with her on that YouTube channel. What's his name? Rick Beto. He does all these amazing long form interviews with musicians, and he mostly interviews classic rock type people, but he's apparently always been obsessed with Little Earthquakes. And so he flew to Tori's studio and he interviewed Tori, and it's just I've heard hundreds of interviews with Tori Amos. I have her autobiography. I really, really could tell you a lot about her, and there were still things in that interview that I did not know. Kermite asking if it's the B-sides too. Tori Amos very, very famously, gosh, this is so gorgeous and so hard to hold. Very, very famously has so many B-sides. And this album originally was going to have different songs on it, and the record label sent her back to write 4 more songs. And so it changed. It does have some of the B-sides. So here in my head here, with art by Jamaica Dyer, Here in My Head is one of the songs that was originally going to be on the album and wound up being a B-side. So I want to say that probably the songs that were originally earmarked for the album, here's Humpty Dumpty, which is another one that was originally, this must be Upside Down because I see a lot of people underwater, and Upside Down. No, it's Flying Dutchman. So yeah, Chromai, if you're a big Tori Amos fan, and this is not the only form factor in the slipcase, there's a much cheaper version that is a little bit smaller than this. I think it's 8 inches by 8 inches, but this is the size of an LP, so I thought it'd be cool to get this. But it's from, it's one of her friends. His name is Rance, but he's this very famous comic editor, and he edits for Z2 Comics. So he does a lot of really cool music comics for Z2, and that is how you can get this. So yeah, as a huge Tori Amos fan, let me please not hurt it. Okay, as a huge Tori Amos fan, it is a very, very cool thing to have. Okay. And that was 10 minutes on my obsession on Tori Amos. How many times have I seen her live? I saw her on the Plugged tour on Choir Girl. I saw her on her 5.5 Weeks tour with Alanis Morissette in the summer of 1999. I saw her in 2001 in the Wang Center in Boston on the tour on Strange Little Girls. And I saw her on Beekeeper. I think that is all the times I've seen her live. I very regretfully did not get to go to the tour for American Doll Posse, which I really, really love that. Okay, wow. That was a lot of Tori Amos. But let's get into the top 25. Moon Girl. Have you ever heard of this? Not Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Moon Girl, the original EC Golden Age comic book. I saw this solicited in DCBS a few months ago. It's in the box that is currently coming to New Zealand. And I was like, what the actual fuck is this? Because I thought I knew about any woman character from the 1940s who had their own comic book. But no, apparently I don't know EC Comics very well. So I I went back and forth. Am I going to buy it? Am I not going to going to buy it. I don't collect EC complete collections, but just the idea that there is this heroine that I had never heard of before, and there's a whole, I think it's only like 8 or 10 issues, and it's all in this book. I'm like, I'm getting it. And I'm so excited to get it. I mean, at least with Wonder Woman, I haven't read all of Golden Age Wonder Woman, but I'm very, very aware of Golden Age Wonder Woman. And so this is like, I don't even have an awareness. And it's so short that, again, I can read it in a day. So I'm so excited. Like, I'm really, really deliriously excited to get to read this. I just think it's so cool, and I cannot wait to find out what it's like. Moon Girl's on my to-buy list for October. Apparently, she was a Wonder Woman ripoff. I really love old obscure stuff like this, and I want to read it. Even Taylor Talks Comics, my friend, did not know who Moon Girl was, so I'm so excited to read it. Number 24. Again, I'm always on my Wildstorm bullshit, and you can't stop me. So this is Gen 13, and here's the thing. Ignore the titties on the cover for a second, folks. Just try to look past the titties. Because I have read this so many times. This is one of the things that went in the Rite Aid basket when I would go down the shore. This first 5 issues holds up to this day. J. Scott Campbell was a teenager himself, drawing teenagers and influencing the writing and the plotting by Brandon Choi, who was not that much older, about teenagers. And it just was one of the few superhero books that I read at that time that I was like, this is it. This is it. This is what it feels like to be a kid right now. They were older than me, but like they felt like the older kids in my life that I like looked up to and wanted to be like and thought were cool. It just, even Gen X at Marvel, which was a very fun book that I love very much, it was clearly written by 2 older men. This book really had something youthful about it. And I reread it as part of that 2016 Wildstorm reread on my blog, and I did not expect it to hold up. I expected to just read like a boring titty book, and it absolutely held up. But when Gen 13 started coming out as an ongoing series starting in 1995, I was already starting to find my way out of comic books at that point. And so I only had a few issues of it, and I just had kind of like lost the joy of reading comic books. So I never really got that deep into it. And I didn't get to read past issue 2 for my Wildstorm read because I only went as far as the big first Wildstorm crossover, which is called Wildstorm Rising. So what I really want to do is basically do a first 3 years read of Gen 13, which is the miniseries, and then the first 2 years of the 1995 series. It's actually much more than 30 issues because there's a lot of like random one-shots and ash cans and stuff. So it actually adds up to like almost double this amount of issue count. So it's actually kind of a lot of issues. And the fact that it's this high shows you how much I love Gen 13 and how much I really, really want to. Andrew O says, I'm tempted by Moon Girl, but that Venus collection had maybe 1 good issue. Yeah, I'm not expecting it to be good. I'm just expecting to learn things from it. Lance McNair saying, I kind of bounced off of Gen 13, but I want to give it another shot. I love the concept. I don't have the deluxe edition of the first 10 issues. I've never done a Gen 13 guide, and so I don't even think I knew that existed. Wow. I thought they did a non-deluxe hardcover of it, but maybe they still called it deluxe, or maybe it was oversized and I didn't even realize. I have it all in floppy. I have every single issue. I mean, it kind of did last. It ran for like, 50, 60, 70 issues, and then it came back and Gail Simone wrote it, which is very highly regarded during the Armageddon era. So like it kind of was the Wildstorm title that had the most lasting power. Authority came and went, Stormwatch came and went, Wildcats they had to keep rebooting. Gen 13 actually was the hit Wildstorm book in terms of at the time. Now we treat it like the Authority was the hit Wildstorm book, but Gen 13 was huge. You know, Ryan, I think it was cheesecake in that J. Scott Campbell just drew, this was his first comic book. Like he won a talent search and got flown to California and became part of Homage Studios, and this was just how he drew, and he was like 17 years old. So it was kind of cheesecake because this is just how he drew. And then it got to be like that Fairchild always had to be in some ripped up clothing on the front or in her like skin tight uniform. And that just became part of the visual brand of the book. But actually it's like a very fun, kind of quirky, sometimes sci-fi teenager book. And it gets closer to X-Men than any of the other stuff at Wildstorm because they really are just like 5 kids who are just like, their parents were effectively like mutants. They had superpowers and they're just like trying to like live their lives. Yarna Paul is saying, actually, it was oversized. Well, screw me then. I didn't. Fuck my drag, as Kenny Davenport would say. Okay, Upgrade Soul. If anybody has watched or is friends with Wonder Maddie on Near Mint Condition, you know she's trying to get everybody on the planet to read this, and which is funny. I've had this on my shelf forever. I just remember seeing this cover, and I was like, why is this weird Teletubby rubbing his belly and holding this old man face over his face. And I was just like, I'm going to buy it. That's a sales pitch in and of itself. And I've just never read it. It's just been on my shelf forever. And now, like, every third time I talk to Wonder Maddie, now that she knows that I haven't read it, she's like, so, did you read Upgrade Soul yet? So it's one OGN. Like, how long would it take? Now that we're getting close to the top 20, things are going to be short. They're going to be very, very short, because these are the things that scored high desire, high significance, high fun, and short. So you're going to see a lot of short things up here. I haven't talked about Indiana Jones yet. This is not an omnibus poll, so nobody outside influenced it getting to the top. Omar has mentioned this a lot. I've always been wanting to read this. Lance McNair, no, I've never seen or even heard of the Gen 13 animated movie. Yeah, Andrew, I've seen a lot of people just say it's fine, but my taste is very similar to Maddie's taste, and my hair is very similar to Maddie's hair. So if Maddie goes that hard for something, I overlap with her way more than I do with Omar. So like if Maddie likes something, I am probably very, very likely to. I actually have, if you remember a few hauls around the world ago, I had my Teletubby makeup that I got from Trixie Cosmetics. I'm actually wearing my Teletubby lip color right now. Fun fact. Okay. Number 22, Alpha Flight by John Byrne. I tricked you. It's in here. Ha ha ha. Yeah, you know, I've read a portion of it. Again, this is one of those ones that I really thought that Kid Krisis was going to be into when we were doing our X-Men read. And then we read the first 2 issues of it, and she's like, we could skip the rest of that. I was like, gosh darn it. So I've just never sat down and read all 29 issues cover to cover. I'm familiar with them. I've been through them all for appearances, because my Alpha Flight guide, which is patrons only, tells what issues every character is in. So I've been through this whole thing, but it's just, I sit down and read the whole. Do I necessarily have to read it before the Mantlo? No, I would be fine just starting with Mantlo, but this just scores higher because it's pretty short. It's super classic. I have all quadrants, and it's crazy that I've never just sat down and read the entire thing. Number 21. This is probably not the Doom Patrol you wished to see pop up, but you know that I am a little bit love-hate with Grant Morrison, and I actually, in anticipation of maybe reading the Grant Morrison Doom Patrol, I was like, oh, this is only 18 issues. Why don't I see what it was before Grant Morrison, directly before, so I appreciate the hard left turn that they took. Now, I am familiar with Silver Age Doom Patrol because it's so close to X-Men that I had always been interested to read it, but I just had never read any of the kind of Vertigo era, and up until I did my Doom Patrol guide, I don't even think I fully realized that there was like this like late Bronze Age, immediately pre-Vertigo Doom Patrol to read. And I read the first couple of issues, and I really liked it because it's still very X-Men-like, X-Men-esque. So I just want to read this whole run, and you can't stop me. So there. Okay, Quinkcognito is incensed. It's not at all the worst comic in the world, but it is very little to recommend it. Well, I want to be able to, I do want to read all of it. I do want to read Grant Morrison's, and I really want to read Rachel Pollack's. And this is one, I just want to appreciate what it came from directly before. Also, I do like some of this art, although as I'm saying those words, Dr. Zeros is not a fan of this early Eric Larson art. All right, are you ready for the top 20? When we get to the top 10, I'm going to have you guess, because I don't think any one of you could guess anything in the top 10. The top 20 has a couple of things you might guess. Number 20, Stormwatch by Warren Ellis. So I have it right here. I actually already... Warren Ellis joins the title at issue number 37 and begins its transformation to Authority. At the end of this, you would pick up the Authority Omnibus. I wish they'd done this in Omnibus instead of Compendium, but I guess they just don't feel like Stormwatch has the sales juice. Even if they had called it Authority Stormwatch, I just don't think it could have sold as an Omnibus. But now I have it. I have it in singles, I have it in trade paperbacks, and I have it in this. Have I read it yet? No, because I never got that far in my Wildstorm to read everything that came before. I know Stormwatch like the back of my hand in terms of like the developments and the characters. I would be fine to just pick this up. It's my number 20, and I'm obsessed with it. I'm obsessed with everything about this period. Why have I never read it all? I don't know. Quinkcognito is just saying it's one of my favorite comics of all time. On to number 19. Oh, this is, I don't know if I ever showed this off. One of my big obsessions is, other than Dracula, is Dante's Inferno. I don't remember. I just have always liked heaven and hell stuff, and I always like angel stuff, and I like Bible stuff in an academic way. I like things that reference the Bible. That's always really fascinating to me. So when I was in high school, I had to do some kind of independent reading, and I read And so I chose Dante's. I had nice little pocket editions, and I got the cliff notes from all of them, not because I wanted to cheat, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything. And I loved Shakespeare. So I have this, I don't know if that's a nicer version or if this is the nicer version, but my version's pretty darn nice. So this was a Kickstarter, and when I saw it, I knew I had to have it. And this guy, he actually illustrated and oh no, not the internet getting slow. This guy illustrated and hand lettered it in Italian and English. So this is by George Cochrane, and it truly is in the style of like an illuminated manuscript. Like it really, really feels like this wild artifact, and it has the full unabridged text of Dante's Inferno in it. And so it's not really a comic book. It's really just like an illuminated manuscript version that with illustrations, but the illustration is the full unabridged text, and it's set as text. It's not set as word balloons. And it's just absolutely gorgeous. And I just thought that this would be such a fun way. Oh gosh, my hair is stuck in it. To re-experience this work that I love so much. So I kickstarted it, and I think I wanted to get like the crazy special edition, and I just could not justify how much more it was going to be. So I think I got this slightly less special edition. But again, and there's my name in it. I'm like, when am I going to make the time? When am I going to sit down? And this is substantial. Like this would not be like a one-day read. This would probably be like a month, because I would probably have to get out my old Cliff Notes. I would want to do some research to better understand what I was reading. But it's kind of like, I didn't get it just to have it on my shelf. I got it because I want to experience it in this format. And I love that it's like a new version of the text, but it's the full text, because I don't like when things get adapted from novels and things and the text is like super abridged. I'm like, well, excited for that. Jean-Remy Argueta loves Divine Comedy. One of my favorite reads of all time. Does only have the translation. There's two separate books, and one of them has the original Italian. So if you read Italian, I think it still could be had from the publisher, and you can get it in Italian. All the same illustration, all the same hand lettering in Italian. I actually think maybe they made a font of his hand lettering and then they laid it out digitally, but it is hand lettered in that sense. Okay. Number 18, Batman Dark Victory. Wow, Batman this high on my list, but that's because, again, pre-New 52, DC is a vast Long Halloween. Like I had read a little bit of Long Halloween, I think, at the time, and then when I went back and read it for one of the Evergreen shows, I was like, this truly does live up to the reputation for me. I think it's every bit as good as everybody cracks it up to be, and this is the thing that comes next. So why would I not read this? I loved Tim Sale. You all know him from like the color books, Spider-Man Blue and Daredevil Yellow, and you know him from this stuff. I knew him because he drew Deathblow, and his style at the time was so audaciously different that Jim Lee would come back to Deathblow and try to draw it more like Tim Sale. So I just really want to read this. I want to read it. I probably won't have it physically. I have thought about getting the omnibus that this is in, but I think I would just prefer it digitally, nice and clean, nice and digital, blown up, giant on my screen. No, I'm telling you, Rigor Rectus, my DC, I'm not embarrassed about this. DC didn't care about their pre-New 52 continuity, so I decided I wasn't going to care. It was only when Rebirth hit and DC started to be like, actually, we're going to acknowledge that again, that I was like, oh, maybe I do care. So like, yeah, I have a huge gap, which is great. There's plenty of comics for me to read. Superjob, just read this last week. It was good. Okay. Number 17, this is a comic that I've read already, but it was before my note-taking era, Bitch Planet. This is a perfect comic to read in the environment that we are in right now. It's like, what if instead of The Handmaid's Tale, or in addition to The Handmaid's Tale, women who are really the worst, the most uppity women, were actually just shipped off to a prison planet where they could just be more productive than they could be in our current society. So it's absolutely kind of an exploitation story, but at the same time, it is a deeply political satire. And Kelly Sue DeConnick just absolutely nails it. Like, I think if you love the spirit of Handmaid's Tale and you want to read a comic that's in that spirit, that's just as grim, but also more fun. That's what Bitch Planet is. The art from Valentine Delandro is incredible. I just think that DeConnick is a slow writer, and this came out slower than she intended it to be, and it kind of just like petered off. They were gonna like have supporting series and have other people write in the world, and it kind of feels like the moment passed it a little bit and it fizzled. But I wish they would actually put this out in like one giant hardcover. I know that'll never happen, but I absolutely love it, and I just want to go back to it now. I mean, I think it originally came out in what, like 2015. I want to go back to it with the eyes of the past decade that we all have and reread it now. I think it's going to be a very, very different experience. Edwin Billy is saying that sounds crazy and I need to read it. Neuron Paul is saying I didn't know what it was about. That sounds cool. Yeah, it is. It is a exploitation extra galactic version of Handmaid's Tale, kind of. Like, if you're a woman who's not going to get down with the Handmaid's Tale on Earth, you're shipped off to the prison planet. That's the pitch for it. And it's about the women kind of their prison society on the prison planet. It's so friggin' cool. And I mean, you know, I'm a huge feminist. I love Kelly Sue DeConnick. This just ticks all the boxes for me. Okay. Number 16, Akira. Now this is tricky, because what I want to do is I want to read the color version. Not because I won't read things in black and white, but because I've seen the color version and it's gorgeous. But I do not have the kind of money to track down all of the color version ones. And sorry, I'm just distracted by how truly incredible my hair looks today. Okay, back on topic. I don't have the kind of money to track down all of the color version ones, and I don't even know if a set of them exists in New Zealand. So I could just get the black and whites, and that's fine. But I got color pilled because at one point I borrowed a color version from somebody, and I just thought the colors were so amazing. I just feel like this is something I should have read. It's, you know, I'm not generally a manga person. This happened largely before I was into comics, so I missed it coming out at the time. I just had no chance to read it that I was a reader, and it just feels too important and too formative, not only for comics, but for sci-fi in general, for anime, for all sorts of fantastical storytelling out in the world, for me to not know. So am I going to finally just break down and read it in black and white? I don't know. I want to read it in color. So when Omar got really hyped during the Marvel poll that like, oh my gosh, maybe there would be some way that Marvel could reprint it in color, I was like, yes, it's finally going to be my moment. But then I think I saw Steve Oliff or somebody being like, the color files just do not exist. They would have to just redo everything. So I'm like, gosh darn it. So I don't know. I have read some of it in my note-taking era, and it is amazing. It's just so... A lot of times when I read manga, and you've heard me say this before, I really feel like it highlights the wrong moments. Not wrong in a bad way, but like I'm not used to stopping in the places in narrative and in action that manga stops compared to Western comics or even BD. I don't feel like that in Akira. If anything, I feel like Akira is so dense. There's like so many moments it stops. It feels like more like a flip book to me, in that, not that I would flip through it, but that the panels really, really bring me along, which is, I don't like sequential art that does not take you from point A to point B. It's maybe a deficiency of me as a reader, but it's also just an opinion. And I just never have that in Akira. So I'm just so excited. Breaking news. Steve Oliff actually has his original files, just nobody contacted him about him as of a couple of years ago. So it could happen. It could happen. And Yarna Paul is saying it's one of the most beautiful black and white pages ever, so I'd still be good. Number 15, this is one of the newest comics on the poll. You've heard me talk about how much I enjoy it in the current poll list. It's Rogue Sun. It's part of the Massive Verse, which is the Radiant Black universe of superhero comics. We know I love a shared universe. I find Radiant Black to be the most boring thing I've read in my entire life, but I never vibe with Kyle Higgins, so that does not surprise me. Nothing against him. He's just not my vibe. This is not written by Kyle Higgins. This is written by Ryan Parrott, and it is just so compelling. If you've not heard me talk about it in Pull List, it's kind of like a combination of Spider-Man and Iron Man and like a little bit Dr. Fate, in that this kid has an estranged father who got remarried to a rich family that he gives all of his time, attention, and money. He dies and he leaves the kid this artifact, and when he puts it on, not only does it give him a superpowered suit, it also lets him talk to his father. And so that's weird. in so many ways. Why did he leave it to him? What is it like to have a relationship with your father after your father has died when you didn't have one with him in life? But then there's so many other layers. There's this whole lineage of the rogue sun suit and all the people who used to have it. There's other people who want to get their hands on it. And he eventually confesses to his step family that he's got it, which leads him to then have a relationship with them, which he never had before. I read the first couple of issues. I thought they were outstanding. I've been reading it since issue 24 or 25 for the pull list. I think it's outstanding. I think it is one of the best indie superhero books on the market right now, and I only have to read 22 issues in the middle to be totally caught up. Why would I not prioritize that? I mean, this is the definition of something I should prioritize because I'm less than 50% of the way through. I love it, and it's a current comic book. So why would I not? Super Jop saying Rogue Sun. I just read this. It's awesome, and indeed twice the book the Radiant Black is, and I liked Radiant Black fine. John Remy says, true, I also prefer Rogue Sun over Radiant Black. I always say it feels a bit too juvenile. Not for me. I hope we get in OHC since Radiant Black is getting a second one. Yeah, this kind of feels like the secret weapon of the Massiveverse. Like it's just so good. And nobody talks about it. It makes me crazy. Like, this is one of the best indie superhero books out there right now. Everybody I know it doesn't have the big concept that Black Hammer has, and Black Hammer is its own phenomena, and I understand that, and I've actually read almost all Black Hammer, but and Minor Threats, of course, has Patton Oswalt as a famous person writing it. I just don't understand why people aren't talking about this like that. And I think the art has been great throughout, actually, and the colors, too. Okay. We're getting close to the top 10, y'all. Close to the top 10. I bet you didn't expect to see this here. So this is Batman post-Crisis, year 1 to Nightfall. I started this project a couple of years ago, and the idea was every time I got through a pull list of, even before I had to show the pull list, I was just going to read 1 or 2 issues of Batman. And I put it all in perfect order. I have a huge spreadsheet of it. And I guess I was making my Batman guides at the time, which was actually back in 2017, although I don't think I actually started the read until like 2019 or 2020. Maybe it was a pandemic project, but I'm actually pretty far. I think I'm actually farther than the 2 DC Finest that we've got so far, but I have to get all the way to Nightfall, so I'm not 50% yet. So I would just like to reprioritize this in my life. I should just be making steady progress. I should just be reading 1 a day. They're not hard to read. I hugely enjoy them. I love this period of Batman because it kind of it's like when people talk about New York City in the 80s and they're like, man, you don't know what it was like to walk in Times Square then. It's not like it was now. Or is now. That's what this Batman is like. Like, people are like, you think you understand grim Batman, but there was this period after silly Batman, you know, of the late Bronze Age, although not all the way through Doug Munch, and before like super commercialized Batman of Nightfall, where this was coming out alongside the Keaton movie, and it's dark. It's dark and it's heavy, but not dark in like a scary way. Just like it's much, much heavier than I anticipated Batman comics would be in this period being Batman. But that was, you know, this was long after his 1960s series on TV. He had no cartoon at this point. This is before the Batman animated series. Nobody knew how the Tim Burton movie was going to do. So it kind of just like was allowed to create this tone for Batman that just was so fascinating. And I really, really, really love it a lot. People are talking about something that I didn't even know how we got on that topic. Do I include Legend of the Dark Knight? No, I have that in a separate line item in the ranking of my runs to read, just because it doesn't always happen in current continuity. So it feels like I could read it off to the side. They do all wind up connecting in events, but they don't fully, totally cross over with each other all the time until we get into Nightfall. Before that, sometimes there's an event that will go across all of them, but then it's just over. So you really can just mostly read Batman Attack up until Nightfall. There is, what is the 4th one? Shadow of the Bat. But you're fine if you just read Batman Attack and cross over where it crosses over. Okay. Guys, we're almost in the top 10. Number 13. Oh, here's another one I get to show up. I told you, Dracula. You think I'm an X-Men fan? Am I a Dracula fan? This is, you've seen me hold this up before. This is another magnetic press book. So the rounded quarters. I have it in a box set with Frankenstein. I do want to read Frankenstein too, but this is more exciting to me. This is Bram Stoker's Dracula by Georges Best. And unlike Dante's Inferno, this is an actual illustrated comic book. But it also, I believe, is unabridged. Because Dracula, as you know, is an epistolary novel. So it's much in the case of this person's dietary entries. No, that's me with my triathlon training. Diary entries and novels. And so it has his narration of these scenes. Because a lot of times in Dracula, it's not like the old woman walked up to me. He's saying, I stood in silence where I was, for I did not know what to do. In the gloom from the castle's tall black windows came no ray of light. The broken battlements showed a jagged line across the moonlit sky. Of bell or knocker there was no sign. The time I waited seemed endless, and I felt doubts and fears crowding upon me. What sort of grim adventure was it I had embarked on? So this has unabridged text. It's absolutely gorgeous. The artwork is amazing. I love Dracula. I've read it many, many times over. Why have I not made the time? It's on my shelf. It's a book that I love. It's absolutely freaking gorgeous. It's unabridged. Why have I not made the time? I don't know, but that is why. It is just outside of my top 10. I mean, it's substantial text, so I would not just read it in a day, but it really, really would, it really, really would not take long. Kane saying Dracula is such a classic. Lance saying, oh man, those George Best books are beautiful. I almost bought them last year and talked myself about it. Yeah, I've gotten pretty good resistance to Kickstarter at this point because I just have so many books in this house, but sometimes something's just too gorgeous and I cannot pass it up. There is a deluxe of Sword of Azrael, but it's only the miniseries. I don't think it's continuing into the actual series, which we could easily, I'm hoping that means they're going to do a deluxe of the miniseries and then 2 omnibuses of the actual series itself. Reaper's been having an opposite year tackling longer runs, which I think is valid too. I just know for longer runs, for me, it becomes an excuse to procrastinate. Like that Batman read. Why am I not done that yet? I've read enough comics to be done that several times over. But when it's longer, I'm like, oh, I'll get to it. Oh, I want time to binge. These shorter things, 5-10 issues that I could just sit down and appreciate, I just know that I can blow through them so much. Oh, funny you should mention, do I have other Draculas? I just happened to grab this off the shelf when I was grabbing that off the shelf. This is the Roy Thomas Mike Mignola Dracula. So I probably will read this one too, but this one is not unabridged. This is I don't know if I have a Wagner Jones. I try to like temper myself to be like, you don't need to buy every adaptation of Dracula that comes out. Rigorectus, yes, I have read Year One because that Batman read, I started with Year One. I know that Batman Year One and Year Two actually starts like a couple issues before that. I forget if I started with 401 or I just started with Year One. I think I actually started a couple issues early because I wanted to just get a sense of what it was like before Year One hits. I do not like Year One. Spoilers. Frank Miller's, I like Frank Miller as an artist much more than I like him as a storyteller. It just doesn't really click for me, but I absolutely have read it. Actually, one of the biggest disagreements I ever got in on the Omnibus group on Facebook is about how I don't like Year One. Okay. Number 13 we already did. Number 12, I have that here. So, this is the Siegfried trilogy. It is also by Alex Alice. I didn't want to spoil earlier, but this is how I know who he is. And this is an adaptation that was originally in French as a BD of the Ring saga. Basically the same thing Lord of the Rings is based on, the same thing Ring of the Nibelheim is about. But it's drawn, he was an animator, and so his art just looks like, oh, you can tell that I've read this because it's like really cracked open to certain. His art just is so beautiful. It's got the European BD quality to it, but when he like shows faces in motion, it looks like cells of animation to me. And I remember the spine on this is so broken because I mean it's not messed up, but I can just feel it's really loose. I read this so many times because I got this right around when I had Kid Crisis. And it was just, I would just sit and read it to her. I think originally he was thinking about doing it as an animated feature or something because it has his studies in the back for animating it. But it was so beautiful. And I just remember I would sit around while she like napped on my shoulder or whatever and just read it, which is probably why the spine is so broken. And it was a really long wait for the other two. So I think by the time the other two came out, I just was so busy with other things in life. And I can tell from the spine of this one that I probably haven't opened it too much. But the second one is Siegfried. And then the third one, Siegfried the Valkyrie. And then the third one is Twilight of the Gods. So it's the whole Ring saga, but it's told in this very, it almost reminds me of Bone a little bit. It's told in this very like this is a young person embarking on an adventure kind of way that I find really fascinating. It's absolutely beautiful. And I spent so long anticipating having it, and now it's just like on my shelf. You know, sometimes there's those things that you wanted it so bad you thought you were just gonna die, and then you have it and then you didn't die. Or like you got it and you didn't live or you didn't die, you just forgot. It's just on the shelf. That's how I feel about it. Like, how has it been in my shelf this long and I haven't read it when it was like something that I was like checking the internet every day for the next version of? Life just goes on. The Ring of the Nibelung is yet another adaptation, which is by P. Greg Russell, which is not eligible because they only have 4 issues left. But this is something different entirely. I've only read 1/3 of it, and it's from before 2017. Rigor Rectus, I thought I was the only one that thought year 1 was overrated. Well, now there's 2 of us. It takes 2 to make a thing go right. Okay, now I'm getting a little punchy because we're past the 3-hour mark. We're not even in the top 10 yet, but we're almost there with number 11, The Max. Now, this is cheating, because I've read the Max so many times. Not all of it, though, because I never had, like, the final 12 issues back in the day. And then I got all the trades, but I never took the time to get that far into it. And then it was one of those books, I always start a new year by reading a book I really love or have always wanted to read. So I've started many New Years reading the beginning of the Max, and then I never get any further. I don't have the maximized versions. I wish I'd got them. I'm hoping they'll eventually do an omnibus or something of them. But I have all of... I don't think I have it all in singles. I think it was too expensive to do in singles. I have it all in the Wildstorm era trades, which are the original colors. I know this book very well. I have a great guide to it and what it's about. I know all the themes of it. I truly know everything that happens in it. I just have never gotten to sit down and read it all sequentially. And it's one of my favorite comics of all time. It was hugely formative to me. I remember the MTV show. I just don't understand why I've not sat down. It's only 36 issues. What am I waiting for? So that is why it is number 11. I don't know if the show is streaming anywhere. I'm not sure. Crome. Is it Crome or Cromai, by the way? Okay, now we're to the top 10. Are you ready for my top 10? I promise some of these are going to shock you. Keep in mind we've been trending shorter. Some of these things are things you will not have heard of. I bet there are only 2 books in the top 10 that you can guess. So you know me. You know what I've said has been on my to-read pile. At least one of these is something you have seen me show on OmniDog and say, I really need to read this. If anybody can guess 2 of the top 10 before we get there, I will give you an IST gift certificate. But you've got to guess now before I start. So I will just look at some comments before we begin. Could all be Tom King. Could be 10 Tom King books. Honestly, I was going to say I've read all Tom King. I read all Tom King up to like 2017 or 2018, and then I stopped reading Tom King. They did the Max maximized, and they came out as a series of oversized hardcovers. And then I think maybe they solicited a compendium and canceled it. I want to say, I want to say that it existed and got canceled. Yeah, Andrew, the Max, I mean, it's Keith unleashed, and it is not easy to look at, and it's not easy reading material. It's content warning. It has a lot of the plot hinges on sexual assault and mental health. So, it's not an easy read either. James Rhodes thinks Legends of the Dark Knight is coming. John Remy think it's going to be Mouse Guard. This is where all of Jeff Johns is going to be, says Super Job. Perhaps Red Sonja. Nth Man, I'll give you another minute. Lumberjanes is not eligible because I read all 75 issues of Lumberjanes since 2017. So they're all commented on in my comment era. So, I mean, I would love to reread it. Lumberjanes is great. Strike Force Mortori. Possibly, I saw somebody say Mouse Guard. Sorry, I lost Mouse Guard. Possibly Mouse Guard. Ghost in the Machine. Books of Magic, perhaps. Justice League International. Okay, here we go. Even if, well, we'll see. We'll see. Feel free to keep flinging them out, but once I get past number 10, no more guesses, okay? Number 10 is Stormwatch, the original Stormwatch 1 through 36. I know, it's cheating, whatever. I make the rules. It's my show. Have I read all of this? Only to issue 26. So I've never read the last 10 issues, and I love it. It's my favorite Image book. I wish DC better put out a compendium of it, because I am telling you this was the best Image launch book. People forget that it launched alongside Wildcats. I know you've all heard me say this 100 times. this is where it was at. This idea was more fully formed very early in the run. Ron Mars joins as a writer, so he like really understands how to drive the plot of a superhero book. It's what if the Avengers were more like the Justice League? It was they're kind of like drawn from all over the world. They have this satellite watchtower type thing that they get deployed from, but they're an Avengers / Justice League that has some bad mojo in their past. Some of them have broken bad in the past. They have prisoners, basically prisoners of war who have superpowers in stasis on their watchtower. Should they be there? Is the watchtower strong enough to protect them from them? They have people, coming from space and from different cultures to the Earth who are like threatening the Earth. Are they enough to protect them? And of course, it does the genius move, which I love so much, that between issues, I think either 9 and 10 or 10 and 11, it flashes forward to issue 25 and shows you so many of the team members have died, and you don't know how because it's just issue 25 released a whole year before issue 25 is going to come out. This is one of those books that I'm like, to me, this is a classic. And I just think it wasn't actually influential. Like, I think the actual part of Stormwatch that influenced people was the Warren Ellis Stormwatch. And so people kind of treat this like it's garbage. I'm like, no, this was the best Image book. It stands up so well. You don't need to make any excuses for it. It's just a really good Avengers Justice League hybrid. It's the one Image book that kind of like fully fulfilled its promise. And Quincognito chiming in to say it's the only one of the 4 books that actually made it to issue 25. I love that. So a bunch of different books, some of which were from Rob Liefeld's imprint, all did the jump ahead to 25, and this is the only book that actually got to 25. They didn't put issue 25 out that month. They just skipped to issue 26 because theoretically you already would have had 25. Yeah, the digital scans, I've seen them. They're not great. I have the singles. So it needs a physical release. Please, DC, please put out a compendium. It's a perfect size for a compendium, 36 issues. And I don't know. I guess nobody would buy it, but it just kills me that nobody has the ability to read it, because I think if this was available digitally, now I can't get on DC Universe right now because I would have to be VPN to the United States, but I have to think that DC Universe probably only has from issue 37 forward. Even if they would just put it on digital, I just feel like if more people were aware of it, they would just know how great it is. Okay, all right, no more guesses. Number 9 is Kingdom Come. Fooled ya, baby, because I probably should read it. Now, I have no excuse here except for fuck alternate universes. That's my excuse. So it was never a priority to me. Why would I read it? I don't care. But over the year and a half of Evergreen streams of Near Mint Condition, they've just beaten me down. I finally have come around to the idea that I should probably finally read it, okay? I don't have it physically. I'm not going to buy it physically. I'm just going to read it on DC. It's 4 issues. I don't necessarily mean I'm going to read the whole. I know people have pitched there should be a Kingdom Come omnibus that has like every Kingdom Come tie-in that has ever happened. I don't need to do that. I just need to read the original Kingdom Come. And honestly, now it's canonized as part of the multiverse. Not that that should matter to me, but like, it's not just a single flight of fancy. It's not like reading Earth X from Marvel. It does have things that matter about it to the DC universe. And again, I just feel like I understand DC in a way that I never used to, that now I will appreciate it. It's kind of like how I always say, people say, read Watchmen right now. I'm like, well, if you have no ground comic books, Watchmen isn't going to really ring for you that big, because it's a comic book about comic books. And I know some people still read it first. Trixie Mattel read it first, and she loves comic book now. So what do I know? But I just feel like if I'd ever read this before, I just didn't have enough grounding in DC heroes to like even appreciate it. So yeah, Kingdom Come. It's four issues. Surely I can make time for 4 issues in my busy schedule of triathlon training. Number 8 is Phonogram, the complete collection. That's actually right here somewhere. But hold on, it's within reach. Now, this was one of the first indie comics that I picked up when I got into comics in 2010 and 2011. So I think Hickman was big, so I got the Hickman singles. And I forget why I even knew. I don't think I even knew who Kieran Gillen and Jamie McKelvey were. I knew Kieran Gillen was writing Journey into Mystery, but I don't think I was reading Journey into Mystery. I just knew that it was a comic book about music, and so I would read it. And so I read the original black and whites. I remember sitting on the floor of my office. This has all been colored for this edition, but I have the black and white trade paperback. And I really like Jamie McKelvey. I remember he had a comic that was just him, Suburban Glamour, and I really liked it. Maybe that's how I found this. But I love music, and I love the idea of music as magic, and I just devoured it. It just clicked for me immediately. It was the beginning of my love affair with Kieran Gillen. But then I never read when they came back and did a second series of this, the Rubatania. Or whatever the last one was, the Immaterial Girl, I don't remember. Whatever the third of the three was, I just never read it. I just was busy and I got it and went in a pile. And so now I truly don't remember anything that happened in it because it was way, way before the note-taking phase. And also, it's all in color, so I'm really interested to see how it hits in color since I originally read it in black and white. And I'm really interested to read all the way to the end that I've never read before. And I have it in this beautiful edition. Why would I not read it? This is like a 2-day read. This whole top 10, I know I said there's 4,000 issues in this whole list of 100. I could do this top 10 in the span of a month. Like, what am I waiting for? And I would be deliriously happy. These are all great comic books that I already know to be great, you know? So if you've never read this, it's about how DJs cast magic spells by playing the right sequence of music, basically. And that music is magic. And but they're also just a bunch of dirtbags living in England in the club scene. And so what happens when a bunch of dirtbags with questionable taste in music are also magicians? Who could be a better person to write that than Kieran Gillen? Yeah. Absolutely love. I have seen one person with one correct guess, and I will give you a gift certificate if you remind me later. You will know who you are because we will get to something that you guessed. And it's a out there fucking guess too. So I'm shocked that you guessed it, but maybe you've heard me mention it before. Next is By the Horns. This is a gimme. You heard me talk about it a couple of hauls ago. I got these beautiful, beautiful hardcovers from the Kickstarter of the creator of this book. It was originally a Scout Comics comic book. I read it and loved it there. I kind of dropped off because I stopped buying digital singles from Scout, but then I saw it on Kickstarter and I was like, you know what? It's going to be worth the shipping to New Zealand to have it. They're gorgeous. They have ribbons. They're oversized. If you've never heard me talk about this book, it's one of these books, which I love when things have this concept of let's deep dive into a fictional situation we see all the time and look at the bureaucratic drudgery part of it. So it starts out that we're basically in like a Final Fantasy video game, and this young woman is trying to level up, and so she is just going around killing a bunch of stuff. And you know how in Final Fantasy it's like you have rat meat, you got beholder eye. So this is her with her little floating cart and her little pet like wolf dog deer thing, bring it back to town to sell all of those things that she won in the battles. As soon as I saw that page, which is the second page, I was like, I am totally, totally hooked on this. I completely understand what this is about now. I'm going to love it. And then you get into the actual plot of it, which is just delicious, which is that she is under the impression that her fiance died at the horn of a unicorn. And so she wants to get tough enough. The reason she's leveling up, because she wants to go slay all the unicorns. It's like the opposite version of The Last Unicorn. She wants to kill them all. But it turns out, of course, she's been led somewhat astray, and there's a big bad who wants the unicorns for a different reason. And also, the acting in this book, like the acting between her and her little dog thing is so great. The art is just incredible. The artist here is... Oh, and I always forget that I got this signed. So the artist is Jason Muir, and it's written by Marcus Naso. I just love it. And I've read this whole one because I had all this in singles, but then I dropped off before this much more substantial second volume, which now I have too. So I probably would reread. Ooh, a sticker. I probably would. I'm going to put that on my makeup case. I probably would reread the whole first one and then read the second one. I'm going to enjoy the living hell out of it. I already know all of that. Plus, again, I just love the concept of she's leveling up, but we're like watching her drudgerous process of like going through the Final Fantasy, taking the side quest, going to the place, and it never plays it like you're in a video game. It just feels like you're reading the story of like Zelda or something. The sticker is a major spoiler. I don't even know. I see lots of horn. I just assume somebody harvested a bunch of unicorn horns. I don't know. I don't know where the spoiler comes in. Okay, we're almost to the end, my friends. And number 6 is Moss. Now, I read Moss in high school, and I've paged through it since then. I have this actual version on my shelf right over there. now more than ever, I think we need to read and internalize this book. We've all repeated that poem, first they came for, but do we really know what it means? Because people are being come for right now. And that's not just a message about the United States. That's a message about the world. It's a message about, genocide. It's a message about the war in Ukraine. It's a message about starvation in Africa. It's a message about all those things. First They Come For is not just a story and a poem about genocide, but I think we need to view it through the lens of the genocide that actually happened, to fully be reminded that this is a thing that any number of people could have stood up and stopped. And the long, slow slide to it meant entire people lost their families, lost generations of family and of knowledge and of culture. It all started with the easiest people to target. I mean, I was a pretty big student of World War II history when I was in university. And like a lot of it started with targeting queer people and targeting studies and information about sex and burning all of the books. And I just think that Moss never goes out of style. And now more than ever, we all need to read it and be reminded. And yeah, it softens the blow in some way to make them little mice. And in some ways, it makes the blow even harder for them to be little mice. But I think there's scenes in Moss that you could not do straight up with people. I just think it would be too heavy. And I think that's a heaviness people should be aware of too. But, World War II stuff is hard to get through. And I think that Moss is really special in that it makes it accessible in a way that you can still get a young person who's now so removed from that. I mean, I had family members who, I guess my family members fought in the Korean War and not World War II. But like you could have known World War II veterans if you're my age. And that's just not the case anymore. And I just think that this is such a critical part of understanding history that we don't repeat. So to me, this is a book I should reread constantly. I think I should read it all the time, especially right now in the world, especially in a world where genocide is happening and we can see pictures of it on the news, on social media, and yet it's still happening. Sorry, this is a political channel. I'm pretty upfront about that. It just so happens that the politics happen to be in the top 10. So, yeah, it's a masterpiece, and I do want it to read it with Kid Krisis, and she has been doing some World War II and genocide study in school this year. So I just want to be fresh on it and have reread it myself before I go on to read it with her. Okay. Is it Moss, Mouse? I say Moss. I don't know. Okay. Number 5, we had a winner earlier. Who was it? Somebody said this. I should have saved the comment. But somebody guessed Starstruck. So you need to give me a poke on Discord or on Blue Sky or in the comment here, Scott Johnson, and let me know how to get in touch with you. I will give you a gift certificate to one of your favorite e-tailers. I've already read Crowded, Witchblade is lower on the list, and Cursed Pirate Girl I'll have to check out. Is that Rucka, Cursed Pirate Girl? I can't think of who Cursed Pirate Girl is. But Starstruck. I wish I had that hardcover. It was in my shopping cart for so long, and I never bought it, but I have the exact version, but in softcover, just a different cover. So this I've had on my shelf forever. I love Michael Kaluta's art. I just think it's so like weird and liquid. And this is the recolored version that came out and restored from IDW. Something about him is just so fun. There's like a Barry Windsor Smith element to it, but then there's also like almost like a Frank Quitely element to it too. And Elaine Lee, if you don't know, is actually the mother of one of the probably two most famous dungeon masters on the planet right now, Brennan Lee Mulligan. And on Dropouts Dimension 20, they do a Starstruck season using modified Star Wars 5e rules, but it's set in his mother's world of Starstruck. It is the best live play I have ever seen. It is absolutely hilarious. If you go and see any of the scenes on YouTube, it's the kind of thing that will make you subscribe to Dropout, which is a great company to invest your time and money in, and it's only like a $7 subscription. And we're talking about a 20-hour live play that is so funny. It's with actual comedians. But this world, it's kind of like a dirtier Star Wars. Like it's just like a very kind of like grungy, factionalized version of space that has so much like weird cool tech and so many, I mean, there's like Girl Scouts that are actually like a militia. There's just so many cool concepts in it. And it's just so funny to me because I've always wanted to read it. It literally, that hardcover on the screen was in my cart for years. And it finally went out of stock and I was like, and so then I got the paperback, and there is a brief sequel to this called Old Soldiers Never Die. I don't necessarily need to read that. I couldn't find it in the house forever. I think I've talked about how I had been looking for it. So I finally found it and I put it on the shelf right by my bed. And now I just need to make the time to read it. It is 300 pages. So like 12-ish comics long. I could read this in the course of a week. I've wanted to read it for over 13 years. Why have I not read it yet? Hold on. Pronunciation guide. It's pronounced like Mao from China with an S. Mouse. All right. I was cool. Cursed Pirate Girl is Jeremy Bastain. Greg Rucka did the Pirates of the Ineffable Ether or something. It was downstairs, and I read the whole thing, but I really would like to reread it, and it was before my note-taking era. Okay, we're in the top 5 now. We're in the top 5. Are you ready for number 4? Oh yeah, and Brendan Lee Mulligan is now the DM of all 3 separate parts of the new Critical Role campaign, in addition to still being the main DM and the exclusive main DM for Dropout. So if you loved I mean, he is incredible as a storyteller, as a stand-up comedian, as an improver. I mean, the man is just really got an incredible brain. His wife, also, Izzy Rowland, I'm obsessed with. Probably my favorite improv comic I've seen anywhere in recent memory. Okay, top 4. There's no way you could have guessed any of these 4. Number 4 is Chromatic Fantasy. This is just a little book that I am absolutely obsessed with. It was on Silver Sprocket. It's by this author, H.A., who's also sometimes known online as H.A. Dirt Cup. I follow them on Blue Sky. I'm a big fan. It's adults only. It says nudity, sex, drugs, suicidal thoughts or actions, graphic violence, and comic mischief. Again, I'm really a sucker for anything that looks like an illuminated manuscript. It's just one of my things that I like. Oh boy, sorry, YouTube. We got some sex in there. And this is not just ditty book sex either, because this is, H.A. is a trans man, and he writes about someone who had been a nun and realizes that in their dreams they have fallen in love with Satan, and makes a deal with Satan that if he can leave the nunnery and be a man, he'll like converse with and make friends with Satan. So now he's out in the world living as a man, and he falls in love with this other man, but there's layers. There's Satan. There's the fact that he's trans. It looks like a Disney cartoon, but it's a Disney cartoon that every so often breaks out into some sex, which I'm not going to show on the screen here. There's something about it that really clicks for me. It's not just that it's queer. It's not just that it's trans. It's the whole everything of it. It's the way that it's drawn. It's like the hyper detailed illuminated manuscript aspect of all of the titles. I mean, look at the letters on part 4. It's the gold embossed outside edges, and it's just how like it combines this very silly innocence of the two of them with their escapades as queer people and as lovers. And it's not like, I don't know how to say it. It doesn't infantilize them. It's not like they're kids. It's just cute. Like cute characters can still have these feelings for each other. Something that's animated in a cute way can still be heavy. And so I think it's almost like the opposite of titty books to me in a way, in that it's like it's not hypersexualized in the way that it depicts the characters at all. And honestly, now that I'm paging through it, I mean, the sex, it's really just a few pages of sex. But yeah, so the former nun breaks out of the nunnery, and then he runs into this Robin Hood type person who's like got the spoils of his adventures. So that's how far I've made it. I'm that far. So I'm not 50%. So it's just so gorgeous. They did a follow-up, or he did a follow-up, HA, that's just like a single comic that I also want to, but that's a lot to get shipped to New Zealand. But this is, I mean, it's just beautiful. I almost put it on the near mint condition end of year. How Omar gets people do end of year videos. I almost did it, but I was only that far into it, and so I didn't want to endorse it without fully knowing. And who knows, I might still hate it by the end, but I'm just obsessed with it. This is the work of a crazy genius, and you can get it digitally, I believe, on his website as well. Okay, that was number 4. Number 3 is March by John Lewis. I don't have it on hand because it lives permanently in Kid Crisis's room. I read the first book of March in a book club at my startup. And I was like, whoa, we picked a graphic novel for a book club. How cool. And then I got it for Kid Crisis. Or no, I just had it. And she was starting to study some things about civil rights in school. So I said, hey, you don't have to read this. Some of it's really heavy. We should talk about it as you go, but you can if you want. I've never seen her read a book that quick. Not even Wonder Woman. And now when civil rights stuff comes up about the right to protest, about segregation, about kind of like, New Zealand was the first country in the world to have women's suffrage, women's right to vote. And we just celebrated the 132nd anniversary of that this weekend. So anytime anything about voting rights or voter suppression or suffrage or segregation comes up, she has this amazing firsthand knowledge of it now because she read a story from John Lewis. It doesn't get any better than that. He's an absolutely historic figure in the United States civil rights movement. And I would love to read the other 2 books. They're here. If I read them, Kid Crisis will discuss every page of them with me. It just gives me chills talking about, what an amazing thing to have this be so accessible and his words and his experiences be so accessible that my kid at age 10 hoovered all 3 books and loved them. I do think it's tough if you've never had conversations about segregation, about those kinds of topics, about the, racism with your kids. I do think it would be hard to hand it to any 11-year-old, but we've always had those conversations. And it just really made me so happy to see her be able to pick it up and take to it and understand it and ask me critical questions about it. So cool. I mean, truly one of the greatest comic books ever made, in my opinion. But I've only read the first one. Maybe the other 2 suck. Okay, now number 2. Some of you called this, but I don't think I saw anybody call that it was going to be in the top 10. You just asked about it. It's on the shelf somewhere, but I'm not going to dig it out. This is the one that when Omnidog and Freddie challenged me to read 2 of my 3 books that I had to read, they both picked books other than this. Freddie picked his Wonder Woman Historia. Omnidog picked the David Bowie Alred book. So this one got left behind. It's only 4 issues. What am I waiting for? It is James Tynion, who I worship, and Martin Simmons, who I worship, the team from Department of Truth, retelling the Universal Monsters version of Dracula. I have it in a hardcover within a foot of my hand right now. Why would I not make time to read it? This is what this whole list is about. Honestly, this list came from that stream and being like, wow, all it took was having these 2 other people tell me of these 3 books, prioritize 2. But now I have this other one just sitting here. I've got to prioritize this one too. When am I going to prioritize this one too? And so now I have 600 books on the list. It was Chrome who asked, and you probably did tell me how to say your name, and I probably missed it because I've been hosting the show for 3.5 hours. Also, I did see that we're getting an all-in-one version of March. I will buy that if it's bigger. I mean, I love the digest versions, but I would love to just have it bigger. Okay, and the number 1, you only could have guessed if you are a religious Omnidog watcher, and if you know me, because pretty recently Freddie and I got in a long discussion about trans history, ancient times to present day, which came out this year. I just happened to throw it in my DCBS cart, and then Freddie had already started reading it and was obsessed with it. And this is one of those things that I love history in a comic book. I think you saw that with March, but I love anything that even the fade out, anything that reflects actual history or history adjacent topics, I'm really into. And the idea, again, I know a lot of what's in here. I've paged through this. I have a lot of trans history books and comic books about topics like this, but this is so concise, and it talks about the idea of queerness all throughout history, all the way back to ancient Egypt, all the way through modern figures. And I just think it's so amazing to have it accessible in such a cool little volume, and it's fun to read. It doesn't really feel like a textbook to me. It's a comic. It has basically bios of different people, and then if there's not people in a specific part of history, it talks about how we might be able to look at that part of history with a trans and queer lens. So I just feel like, especially right now with what's happening in the United States, especially with the recent news of the past couple of weeks, what a great time to read this and see that trans people have always been here and they are not going anywhere anytime soon. And this is not just a political statement about the past couple of weeks. This was on the top of my list from when I made the list. I'm 5 out of 5 excited to read it. I 5 out of 5 think it's significant. It's short, so it got a 5 out of 5 out of length, and it got a 5 out of 5 because I think I'm going to really enjoy it. So it's the one book out of my entire 30,000 some book collection that has an absolutely perfect score. So, and I will just remind you, this quote that we had last week, actually we attributed wrong. It's widely attributed to James Baldwin, but it's actually from a writer who I followed online a long time, Robert Jones, who has always called himself online the son of Baldwin, which is that we can disagree with each other and still love each other. Or for that matter, anybody's oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. Then we can't disagree. We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. And that is what I'm going to be ending every show with at this point, because I think that's who we are and that's the community I want to be a part of on YouTube. That I want to disagree about all kinds of comics. I want to disagree about music. I even want to disagree about some things about society broadly and even politics, but I'm never going to have a disagreement about anybody's humanity and their right to exist. But then I wanted to throw in a James Baldwin actual quote that I actually sourced, which I think really goes well with this whole list, which is, you think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read. And I think that's why we all read the comic books we read, because they're entertaining, because they transport us to different worlds, because they show us things we couldn't have imagined on our own, because they're a communal experience that ties us to other readers that love comic books, but also ties us to the characters and the experiences that they're having in the comic books. And sometimes we see something totally alien to ourselves, and sometimes we see something very, very familiar to ourselves. And I think in these 100 runs, I think if I were to actually read them all, I would see a lot of things familiar to me, and I would see a lot of things that are really new and different to me as well. So let's just remember that when we think of all of our pain and our heartbreak, and then we think that it's unprecedented and nobody has ever felt that way before, then we can read. So that has been my top 100 runs to read. Did you find books that you're going to put in your to read pile? I'd love to know what books you have put into your pile. And I'd love other suggestions you have for me. I don't have anything I have to edit out of this video, so I'll be able to see all of your chats. So if you want to tie in at the end, ooh, where's this? Where's that? Maybe we could have a future one where I just tell you where things are. I can't open the spreadsheet now. Everything would crash. Or what should I count down next? Should I just do 200 to 101? Should I talk about runs I've already read? Should I talk about runs I don't want to read? I love the idea of doing a regular countdown show when I can't do a pull list show. So I would really love to start coming back with more of these and more thoroughly. Andrew O already bought a 7 Against Chaos, so I guess that has already happened. Logan Wayne, I know, if I had more time, I would have actually DM'd you to talk about it. I couldn't believe it, but I checked multiple sources, and that is actually a son of Baldwin quote that has just been misattributed. It looks like March is not a bigger size looking at the Amazon measurement. Cedric and Ellen, I've read a little bit of My Brother's Husband. I'm not a huge manga fan, so it's like I would need to be in some kind of book club or reading club to like really absorb manga. But I did page through it, and it's like, I really do like it. It's just, I just don't love the storytelling pace. Transformers, I'm all caught up on the current Energon Universe Transformers, so there's no reason for it to be the list. And since I'm not a big Transformers fan, there's really no reason for me to have old Transformers, because I just would never sit down and read all of it. Kane saying the top 10 was not surprising to me. These books are very on par with who I am. Krisis, Lance McNair almost got in on that sweet, sweet gift certificate action, but didn't actually type March. Although I did say you had to guess 2 in the top 10, which nobody actually did. But since Starstruck was such a deep cut, and since somebody was able to guess that, I am giving credit. John Remy saying, funny, I always have the universal thing on my list to prioritize, but it's the creature from the Black Lagoon, so does Kuru. And I think we're kind of caught up. At this point, Warren Weaver jumped in here. Maybe he was expecting some more X-Men to appear. Luther Strode. I think I have Luther Strode. But have I ever read Luther Strode? I am not sure. I've done that many times talking about Star Trek. I had something in my basket of wishes for so long thinking I'll get it next time, and then it goes oop and never returns. I just did that with Books of Magic, which are not in my top 100 but still a high priority for me to read. Spoilers, Andrew O, you don't have to send me your volume 2 because I found a volume 2 pretty cheap and I ordered 1 and 3 from the States. So spoilers for a future haul around the world for all of my faithful watchers. I soon will have Books of Magic here in the house. Okay, that is it for today. I do think I'm going to be back next Sunday. I don't know what it's going to be yet. Are we going to try to catch up on pull list? Are we going to do another topic? Part of it has to do with your comments. So many of you tuned in live to this. It was a pretty big number for live viewers. I hugely appreciate it. I didn't say smash that like button the whole time, but if you all currently watching smashed it right now, it would help, because this is kind of like an evergreen video for me. And I think what we can do is check in, I don't know, every half year, every year, and I can talk about which of these that I've read. And I think if I read any of them, I should do a stream about them. Would you want me to do like a book club? Like, should I warn you, ooh, we're gonna read it, and then give you the chance to read it too? Or should I just read it myself and then talk about it and then get you excited to read it? I'm always up for your feedback. I love that you're my community online. It makes me so, so happy to be a part of it and to be friends with you all and to be comic book fans with all of you are. Tiger Eyes just finished reading one of my favorite books of the past couple years, Rainbow Rowell's Runaways. It's such a great read. I hugely recommend it. I think it's even better than the original Runaways. So, oh, some votes for book club. Okay, well, until I see you again, I supposedly am going to be in near mint condition later this week on Thursday for Spider-Man Evergreen. I haven't even set out the instructions, so who knows when that's going to happen. I'll also be triathlon training morning, noon, and night, as I typically am. It's also break week here in New Zealand, although I'm not going outside anywhere in this apocalyptic weather, but hopefully that means some adventures with Kid Crisis. But I will try my best to be back next Sunday with a topic yet to be determined. So look, it's a hard world out there right now, and between now and next Sunday, you're going to be tempted to have a crisis, but you're not going to. And I just want you to all remember that people can disagree with you and they can see both sides unless that disagreement is rooted in the impression or denial of somebody's humanity and right to exist. And then we're going to say, that's not a side, that's bigotry. So let's all keep that in mind. And until I see you again, please do not have a crisis unless, of course, it is me.